2024 meeting of the South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. All right. We first have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I would remind everybody, if you have your cell phone with you, please make sure it's silent. So if the secretary would read the notice for the public meeting.
Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. Number one, application 24-04P, South Windsor High School athletic fields and campus improvements. This is a request for a special exception to table 3.1.1A and site plan of development for the following. A new synthetic turf field, including a special exception request to 6.4.3.4 for athletic field lighting, 7 new tennis courts, and 4 pickleball courts, and traffic and circulation improvements around the school campus on property located at 161 Nevers Road, A20 zone. Number 2, application 24-08P, medical office building, request for special exception to section 5.3, which is office conversion overlay, and site plan of development for conversion of existing residents into medical offices for a property located at 1300 Sullivan Ave, formerly 8 Collins Lane, RR zone. And third, PZC-sponsored amendment to modify several sections of section 6.4.10, minimum number of EVSE parking spaces to clarify the number and timing of required EV installed and EV ready spaces, and modify section 11.8 appendix H, electric vehicle supply equipment, EVSE, to update EV charger requirements related to equipment, screening, site signage, and EV charger installation illustrations. This was continued from February 13th, 2024. Copies of the application are in file in the office of the town clerk and the planning department and online at www.southwindsor-ct.gov/planning. At this hearing, interested persons may be heard, and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email. Persons who may require an accommodation can contact staff at 860-644-2511, extension 2329. Stephen Wagner, Chair, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Dexter. So now we're going to begin the public hearing for application 24-04P, the South Windsor High School athletic fields and campus improvements. Before you begin, I want to make sure we have in front of us the complete application, because I noticed that one of the drawings, the key drawing, was not in the package we got. Is that still part of the application?
Yeah, it's still part of it.
Okay. And then there was a drawing D5 that disappeared. Is that still part of the application? It had the pictures of the lighting.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, in the previous set, yeah. Okay, if you would introduce yourself and you're signing in, I can see that.
Are you seating anybody? No. Okay.
We're all here.
Yeah, good.
Good evening. For the record, Chris Hulk, Director of Design and Construction for Field Turf, President of CEH Engineering Consulting, licensed professional engineer here in the state of Connecticut, here on behalf of the South Windsor Public Schools. So as we went through last time, you know, the reason that we're here in front of this commission for this project is for various different improvements that will be applicable to the overall high school site. Just as a recap for anybody that wasn't here last time, you know, briefly is the couple of main pillars is to add additional athletic fields, have a lit athletic field, improve the traffic and circulation patterns around the site, and redo the existing tennis courts. Again, just as a summary, the existing tennis courts were built, I believe, in the 60s, so they are well past their lifespan. The South Windsor area around the school itself really needs more fields, and there was nowhere on site that we could propose this project that would not either lose a field or not be able to meet the regulations as far as distances from property lines for the lighting fixtures. The need for a lit field is something that the school has been pursuing for a number of years and is something that's really drastically needed for the community. Because as you're aware, when you're really in the fall season, you know, really gets dark at, you know, 3, 4 o'clock, so, or, you know, 4 o'clock, and the ability to have games be completed and have practices is really hindered by not being able to have lights on the field. What that means is kids need to leave school early, kids from other schools need to leave school early, potentially parents that, you know, may work a 9-to-5 job may never get a chance to see their kid play. So lots of different aspects that a lit turf field will really help to benefit the town and the school itself. And lastly, the traffic and circulation patterns. Currently, there's only one access road into the site. This one has been studied by a number of different entities, both the school itself, the police department, a couple of different engineering firms, and here we are, we've settled on basically a teed up intersection, or as close to teed up as we can get it, across from Sunset Terrace, that will allow a secondary access for emergency vehicles, improve the circulation patterns, and really help to make it so that the site has multiple points of access in an effort to improve the pickup and drop-off operations that cause delays around the school itself. So now I just wanted to kind of touch base on where we've come as far as updates to the plans. The plan that's up here is the original site plan. As you can see there's, you know, a limited number of trees that we had on top of a berm that we were going to be putting in on the right side. We thought that the existing vegetated buffer that's on kind of the left side of the screen and the north side of the screen would be adequate for shielding of the property. Through review, through this commission, and through the town, we had an interim plan, kind of middle step, where we added some evergreen trees along the left side, added some additional plantings along the right side, worked through some town comments, and, you know, we felt that that was a pretty significant improvement. We still received additional comments that we wanted to, the town and abutters felt it was necessary to add additional screening. So where we've gotten to at this point is the current site plan, where we've added a significant number of evergreen trees along the abutting properties, a significant number of trees along Ayers Road. We've also included some sort of understory type of growth with rhododendrons. So we've really made an effort to enhance the vegetative buffer below the story of the existing upper vegetative buffer to the extent that we really feel is appropriate. One of the other requests that came through from the town is there is an existing fence line that's located on town property. That part of, I believe one of the comments was to remove that encroachment and put up a new chain link fence. So that fencing, along with the additional buffer plantings, I think has gone a long way to really enhance the plan from what was really meager plantings originally to a pretty substantial buffer now. Here is the current grading plan. We worked through with engineering staff.
Excuse me, when you're showing us a drawing, would you identify the drawing number so everyone can page through here?
Yeah, I believe this is SD1, or sorry, GR1. Should be the. Yeah. So this plan, some updates from the previous plan, but in general, it was mainly due to drainage and some minor changes to meet concerns that engineering staff had. A few things that we put on here are that we still have the same basin size, but we added some notation about rebuilding the drainage system within Mountain View Road to the extent that the town would like that to happen as part of the overall project. So that would be something that would be completed prior to finishing the overall project. Here's just kind of an updated sort of rendering to try to clarify some of the finalized building portions of the overall project and give you a little bit of scope on where the site lays out on top of the existing conditions. So as you can see here, the kind of lower and right-hand side shows where the new driveway is going to go. The existing annex parking lot is on the bottom right-hand corner. That will be, resurfaced and restriped to flow better, have better traffic circulation, and provide additional parking. You can also see the new driveway across from Sunset Terrace. So there's an existing driveway there now, but we're going to be improving that access, but maintaining the one thing that we were trying to maintain was the utility pole that's there, because there's a significant amount of stuff that's on that. The town will be installing, as part of a separate project, sidewalks along Ayers Road. That's kind of the whitish or light gray line that's on the right side. You can see the buffer plantings that are just inside of that along Ayers Road, just a little bit to the left. We have our emergency access and maintenance path on the top side of the screen that'll be able to access the field, that has a walkable paved access path around the entirety of the field. Then as we work kind of on the top side of the screen, we have future bleachers that will be the same, both bleachers combined will be the same size as the bleachers that are on the existing stadium field. The idea there being that we're not increasing the capacity of the largest events, that we're basically maintaining that, because we would not be in a situation where we would be having two major events at the same time. There may be games going on at the same time, but major events and something that would be happening at night, obviously the other field doesn't have lights, so there would really only be one major event happening on site at a time. As we move further to the left, you can see the green there is the enhanced buffer that we have there. As we work along the left side of the plan towards, as we go down, that is another ADA accessible path that goes down to the field. And as we move sort of more centralized to the field, we have the sort of snack shack on the sort of left side of maybe the 30-yard line. Centrally, we have the press box, and then between the press box and the field is the proposed bleachers, again matching the number of seats that are on the existing stadium. So really, this plan's been reviewed multiple different times by throughout the town. We developed this for a number of reasons, but the main reason that we chose this site is we're able to meet the distances needed for lighting setbacks from the property lines. This is the only spot where we're able to add a field and not lose a field, and this also allows us to improve the traffic around the site by able to have a secondary access. One of the clarifications that we wanted to make was to talk a little bit about what pickup and drop-off operations are actually like. Currently, everyone during morning drop-off times it's a one-way only from about 6:30 in the morning to about 8 o'clock in the morning from Ayers Road. The existing driveway is everybody comes in, and then after 8 o'clock it reverts back to both both directional use. The students park on the front side of the school. They share that entrance with the buses. Faculty parking is the one shown here on the left side, and the existing annex lot is also used for some student parking. When we get to the pickup operations in the afternoon, the annex area with the limited parking and queuing area that it has now acts as the designated pickup area for the students leaving the school. The main entrance acts as both in and out, so you have lots of intermingling of students leaving, buses coming, parents coming to pick people up, and it's just, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's very hard to manage. Because of that, there's a lot of delays that happen in and around Ayers and Nevers Road. So some of the things that we're doing as part of this plan that will enhance those operations is significantly increasing the amount of queuing space within the site. So during drop-off operations in the morning now, instead of intermingling with buses and trying to figure out where to go, parents will know that they have to go to this kind of back entrance. There'll be available space for about 50 cars to queue as they continuously drop students off, and then work their way back through the proposed improvements as they get out towards Ayers Road. The student parking partially will remain on the front side of the school, and then the enhancements we'll be doing around this area will also be for student parking, with teachers and staff still maintaining that lower left parking area. Some of the reasons for that is because teachers and staff get there before the students and the parents start to queue. Usually that peak time for parents is about 7 a.m.-ish till about 7:30, and teachers get there a little bit before that. So that will allow them to park in their space, get into the school, so we don't have intermingling of teachers coming in with the queued up parents. During the drop-off operations, we wanted to make sure that we also had enough area for people to leave the site. So in addition, obviously, to the people that would be able to queue up while waiting for somebody to come into their car, which is still about 50 or so cars. When they leave the site, there's additional space for them to back up and queue onto the site without queuing onto the town roads. So the reason that we thought that this would be an appropriate way to help enhance this area is this will allow any of the traffic that's still on the roads to get through the site without being completely hindered by everyone just being on the town roads. So trying to keep less people on the town roads to mitigate the amount of people that are just jumping out there. We recognize this may not be the end-all, be-all of all of the plans and improvements that the school may need, but this was what we felt was appropriate as part of the overall plan to enhance the site. We understand that as the school works through trying to come up with the most efficient path and way to get people in and out of the site, that they may make minor alterations to the access to the site, which they will continue to work through the police department for. It's been a pretty standard operating procedure for them for the number of years, but they may find little things here and there that they want to tweak. So the goal of this plan is to really help to mitigate the traffic issues, but some of the morning pickup and drop-off operations will continue to be a little bit of a nuisance for a small period of time, typically 7 to 7:30, and then about 1:45 in the afternoon until about 2:15 in the afternoon. So some of the areas will go from here, or just to touch on a couple other things, and just reiterate as far as the lighting goes. We are not proposing any photometrics at the property line. So the lights that are being proposed for the field are 70 feet tall. The lights that are being proposed in and around the drive aisles, none of those will have any of the photometrics at the property line. It's all going to be specific to the field location. The photometric plan that was submitted shows that with 0-foot candles at the property line. Then as far as the circulation patterns, the next step after getting approval here would be to go to the Office of the State Traffic Authority. This is a major traffic generator for the town, so they ultimately have to review the project as well. But I think to date, through the number of iterations we've done through the plans, I think that we've gotten to a point where we have satisfied everything as far as the engineering comments. I think we've gone a great deal to improve the buffer around the site to help limit any of the impacts around the abutting properties. And the addition of this field will help enhance the community, help enhance the town, and the addition of a lit field, obviously being something that a number of residents around the town have wanted for a great deal of time. So I don't think I've missed anything else at this point, but I'm still happy to answer any questions or follow-up questions or elaborate on anything else that I may have neglected to answer.
All right, thank you. Does that end the presentation? And we'll have questions later, of course. Yeah.
Yep, I would say that ends my presentation.
All right, thank you. We'll now turn to our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. Just briefly, you did get in your packets an update that actually Justin Russo prepared for me of the changes on there. So just to kind of highlight some of the things that we had been looking for, there's a 6-foot tall vinyl coated chain link fence that's proposed along the property line. This would be the property line to the west. Joining the 36 Mountain View Road, this will tie into existing fencing that's out there. One of the concerns I think I expressed at the last meeting is there's an existing encroachment of a fence that's not the town's on the town property, and so with this plan, that fence should be removed and the town will have ownership of a fence out there. It will require some, fitting it out there, I think, because of existing vegetation, try to save as much vegetation as possible, and then they've supplemented it quite a bit with evergreen trees and shrubs along that property line on the plan that Chris just reviewed with you. Other changes in the plan, they put in some traffic signs and wayfinding signs around the school, help people get around. They've shown the future concession building and a water fountain jug filler located near the athletic field behind the bleachers. One of the things we talked about is the portalettes. They're showing locations for some right in the top field and then down by the handicap accessibility. In the lower field, those are things that, we can certainly work with them at the time of events to try to locate them best on site. Other changes really included the grading and modifications to stormwater, so I'll let Jeff comment on that. Just a couple of comments on the plans. These plans do reflect that the pickleball courts are going to be lit. I think you represented they weren't going to be lit, so we want to make sure the lighting gets lost. It doesn't reflect on these plans, not having that. We talked about the zoning data table. One of the comments, Chairman Wagner, we were missing a page that kind of got dropped out of the plans. And the other comment I had was along Collins Crossing, we're adding the tennis courts there. They will be screened with a fence, but there's no new vegetation. I didn't know if there may be some opportunity for some evergreen shrubs or something just to help. Collins Crossing is owned by the town, and there's some street trees along there, but they are deciduous trees. So there may be some consideration along that area for some kind of vegetation just to interfere with the screening of the tennis courts. And that's pretty much the comments that I have. Thank you.
Mr. Hall, why don't you have a seat, because we'll probably have comments from the public, and then we'll get back to you if we have any other questions.
Thank you.
And now our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. Just a couple of cleanup comments. The storm drainage pipes leaving the side of the athletic field down Mountain View Drive should be listed as at least 15-inch diameter pipes. And there's three crosswalks crossing the proposed new driveway. One in the middle of the field shown as a raised crosswalk. The others two are not labeled, so I was just wondering if those are raised crosswalks as well, or just regular crosswalks, and they should be.
Okay, now we'll take comments from or questions from members of the public. When you come up here, please sign in, state your name. I would ask that we limit the comments to new information. If you've already given us some information last time and nothing has changed, in order to keep the meeting as short as possible, please stay with the changes or new items.
I've already signed in,
Okay.
and please leave that picture up there, because that's what I want to talk about. My name is Ray Paulin, and I live at 25 Mohegan Trail in South Windsor. Different than the other speakers, I come as a tennis and soccer player. My viewpoint on the proposed lighted tennis courts differs from the school superintendent's. Rather than being high school facilities that the community is allowed to use after school hours, I view the tennis courts as being community facilities for which the high school receives priority usage. The high school doesn't pay taxes, the community does. That's why I'm puzzled why the Parks and Rec Department is not a partner in this plan. They're the ones who proposed the last lighted synthetic turf multi-sport field referendum, the ones who offer tennis lessons on summer mornings, and the ones who maintain all of the athletic fields and courts in town. My comments will primarily address the tennis courts. These are not showstoppers, but rather player preferences. I disagree with the opinion of one of the commissioners at the previous public hearing about the adequacy of the tennis court parking. The parking for the tennis and pickleball courts off Nevers Road in the high school plan is inadequate. Exasperating that problem, I prefer 8 tennis courts. Like most of our surrounding high schools, Rockville and East Hartford, to drop a couple of names. The 8th lighted court to be where the 7-court parking spots are planned. So 2 sets of 4 lighted tennis courts. The only playable tennis courts remaining in town are the high school courts. And during the spring tennis season, they're only available to the community on weekdays after 6 p.m. Compensating for the inadequate parking, my preference is for a parking lot to be constructed across the high school exit driveway, below the pickleball courts, extending to Nevers Road. 7 parking spots for 8 or even 7 tennis courts day and night, and 4 daytime pickleball courts don't come close to meeting the prime time demand. Tennis players usually meet at the courts, and even a conservative assumption of half the tennis courts being singles and half being doubles means more than 20 cars. Not to mention the pickleballers who usually play doubles. South Windsor has a vibrant evening tennis community. If you don't believe me, just check the membership rows at the neighboring tennis clubs in Manchester and East Hartford. This may not be obvious when you drive by the high school tennis courts on a summer evening, but that's because most of the South Windsor folks, including me, are playing at either the Rockville or East Hartford high school tennis courts because of the better lighting. And those courts are full most evenings. Borrowing from a line from the movie Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. So I'm suggesting a minimum 30-space parking lot either off Nevers Road or the high school exit driveway, or both. During the day, this parking lot could also serve to handle the overflow from the youth soccer games down the road at Nevers Road soccer fields, rather than have supporting family and visitors park on the grass along Nevers Road as they do now. Rockville High School recognized this a couple of years ago and paved over some grass areas to expand the parking lot next to its tennis courts. Then there's the tennis court's lights and signage. The lights need to be automatic and programmable. The biggest challenge with the lights is when to have them turn on as needed, since dusk runs from between 4 and 8 p.m. during the spring to fall tennis season. I suggest that South Windsor do what I believe is done at East Hartford High School. Have the lights equipped with photocells to detect darkness and buttons on 2 of the light poles, 1 for each set of courts, that the players can push to turn on the lights but not turn them off, similar to our existing high school tennis court lights. Then program the off timer to 10 p.m., spring ahead and fall back, not 9 p.m. as discussed at your previous public hearing, preceded by a 10 to 15-minute warning. This allows folks who prefer to play after dinner or putting the kids to bed to still squeeze in 2 hours of tennis in the evening. A similar lighting scheme might also be implemented at the lighted synthetic turf multi-sport field to enable evening adult and youth soccer. Manchester has just approved the lighted synthetic turf soccer field to be completed next spring for this very purpose, adult and youth soccer. As for signage, along with the high school priority signs, there needs to be a for tennis only sign to keep the pickleballers off the tennis courts at night. Also to keep other unauthorized users off, such as skateboarders and dog walkers who have a penchant for unleashing their dogs in their own private fenced bark park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Shaken from the law firm of Shipman, Shaken, and Schweffel. I'm pinch hitting for my partner, Larry Shipman, who is out of town today and has been handling this matter. I'd like to bring, first of all, to the Commission's attention, Mr. Shipman submitted a letter dated April 15, 2024. I'd like to just
Excuse me,
confirm.
can you pull the microphone closer to you, please?
And, so could you spell your name? I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah.
Your last name.
Shaken, S-H-A-I-K-E-N for Nancy. And should I repeat what I've said so far, or people able to hear me? Okay, so I was saying that my partner, Larry Shipman, and I should indicate we represent abutters, Eric and Elizabeth Hill. On the map that was previously on the screen, their property's on the left, not this map, but if the prior map could be put up.
Do you want us to bring up the other map?
Could it be,
Yeah.
please?
You're talking about LA1 or GR1? Whichever shows the buffers better.
I mean, this one, this house.
Yes? Thank you.
So our property's on the left on Mountain View Road. I wanted to just get confirmation that Mr. Shipman's April 15 letter is part of the record. And he's asked me to read it into the record. Before I do that, though, I'd like to address a couple of issues because since this letter was written, this site plan was amended, as is on the screen. First of all, fencing. The existing fence, which my clients disagree encroaches, it is on their land, is 8 feet tall. We would request an 8 to 10 foot fence, whereas what's been proposed is a 6-foot fence. And the plan should be revised to show that fence on the town's property, not on the Hills property. We wanted to just bring to the Commission's attention the question of whether the applicant has now provided the additional information requested by the town engineer at the last hearing regarding the drainage plan and the traffic plan, and whether the engineer is satisfied with those revisions. On the easterly property line, where a walkway is being built, which would be the lower left-hand corner of this map, there needs to be a buffer there. There were and are trees there, but they were cut way, way down, and there needs to be trees and rhododendrons to provide a buffer to my client's property. And the ones that were there or are there but were cut back should be restored with trees that will mature to their full height. The plan indicates a placement of portalets, but it uses the phrase potential placements, and we would urge the commission to require that the phrase should be general location, not potential location. We understand, you know, they may move around a little bit, but the plan should say that that's their potential, that's their general location. There are points in Mr. Shipman's letter which I'd like to bring to your attention, beginning on page 2 of the letter, and they go on to page 3, numbers 6 through 14. And these are all things that we would urge the commission to require as conditions on its approval. For example, hours of operation should be specified. Loudspeakers should be directed away from my client's property. There should be no further encroachment into the buffer next to the walkway that I just described. We'd ask the commission to establish and state on the record rules for the use and access of this facility. And those should be required to be posted on the fence, and they should include a provision that the loudspeakers must be at 50 decibels, 50 decibels or less, and there should be supervision requirements for Board of Ed and community uses. So, for example, if there's a football game, there should be adequate security, police presence, that sort of thing. We would like, as a condition of the approval, that the town establish a point of contact for any complaints that the abutters may have. We'd ask that the lighting for the parking lot and the walkway be cut-off lighting so the lighting shines down and does not bleed onto our property. The applicant should identify the intended number of nighttime events as a condition to the approval. As I mentioned, there should be security and law enforcement for the events. And I'd like to bring to the commission's attention that on the existing field, there's a PA system. I'm not talking about that. There also were installed additional loudspeakers. And those, once this new facility is opened, should be required to be removed because there'd be no need for them. If it please the commission and with your forbearance, may I read the letter into the record? Or would you like me to forego that since you have it in your hands?
I think we have it in our hands, and I think you've guided us through it, so we don't need you to read it into the record.
Okay, I have one moment, please. All right, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you very much for your attention.
Anybody else from the public would like to comment on this? Okay. In that case, we'll go to commissioners. Commissioner Bernstein.
Chris, why don't you come on up for me, please? Couple questions. So just as a refresher, big picture, what will this whole project provide that isn't available to the town now?
So currently, there is not a lit athletic field on the site. That hinders the amount of usage you can have because basically you're hindered by light pollution, or the ability to actually, see the balls and stuff. Additionally, I'll just scroll to the overall site.
You can top line this, that's okay.
So we'd be adding synthetic turf field and additional athletic field space that currently doesn't exist on site. And this is the only spot where we could add one without eliminating another field that's already in place. This will rebuild the existing tennis courts that were built in the 60s. Those existing tennis courts are lit, so, maintaining lighting on the proposed tennis courts. And then having secondary access to the school, both for pickup and drop-off operation improvements, and also emergency access and emergency vehicles to be able to access the site. So, yeah, adding a field, new tennis courts, new access, and lights that will allow, more community use.
Okay. If I'm looking at some of these drawings correctly, it appears as though we're losing a baseball field. What happens in that case? Does that get put somewhere else, or is it just lost?
Yeah, so the school has been working with the town recreational department to move that Little League field or small diamond field to Eli Terry. Is that Eli Terry School? There's a backstop there. The infield will be rebuilt, so the field would basically just be moved down the street slightly. So while it'll be lost from this site, it won't be lost from the town.
Eli Terry.
Yeah. So this one will go to.
So kids that live in this neighborhood aren't going to go to Eli Terry to play ball, right?
It's not just,
Right. So you think, I mean, you're the expert, you think that we have a satisfactory number of baseball fields in that area? Yeah, okay. I'm going to ask you to address some of Attorney Shakin's comments. Can you just discuss issues related to noise, lighting, hours of operation, and even security for me?
Sure. I was just seeing if there is a Little League complex just on the top right corner of the site, but it doesn't show up on the overview.
maybe he could go through the items with the number of the item that he's addressing, so we're getting them addressed.
Okay.
Sure. So I'll just start at 1 and move through. So expand the current fencing with new 8-foot to 10-foot tall chain link fence, extend the entire length of the project, which abuts the neighboring property, Mountain View Road. We currently have a 6-foot tall fence there. I think 6 is adequate, but if the commission feels strongly that it should be 8 foot tall, I don't know, from my perspective, if somebody's gonna climb an 8-foot tall fence or a 6-foot tall fence, they're gonna climb a fence either way. Usually with a 6-foot tall fence, it's slightly harder to climb because there's not a mid-rail in that fence, so it's a little more difficult to climb. If climbing is the key factor, then I would say changing the mesh size would probably be the answer for that. Instead of a typical 2-inch diamond mesh, you might go down to something like 1 inch or 1.25 inches. While I still feel that the typical fence for 6-foot tall chain link fence would be adequate, if the commission feels otherwise, we're happy to make those amendments. I think number 2 is pretty satisfied with the number of plantings that we've been added to that part of the site. I will scroll back up to sheet LA1, which describes the number of plantings and stuff over there, but I believe there's, I think it's in the range of 20 or so. I can count them out, but we've added a significant number of plantings to that side. I think that also addresses number 3. The plantings listed on the planting plan, I think address number 4. can't zoom in all the way, but I think we have them as 8-foot tall plants when they're installed. As far as, buffering the area from, any lighting from the existing lights,
Are you still on number 3?
I think 3's been satisfied with the installation of the plantings.
Okay, but also he asked for cross-sections? I think they were in some of the drawings, right?
We presented cross-sections through our last planning and zoning meeting. They weren't submitted as part of the set of plans, but if necessary, we're happy to include those as part of the final set of plans with whatever other, comments that are needed. Number 4 is the 8 to 10 foot tall evergreen variety plantings staggered and clustered. I believe we accomplished that with the new planting plan. Number 5, in addition to screening and viewing of the proposed field, the planting should be placed in areas around the parking lot.
Could you put the mic closer to your mouth?
Number 5 is, in addition to screening and viewing of the proposed field, the planting should be placed in areas around the parking lot to prevent light from reconfigured parking and drive aisles to the abutting property. One of the ways that we felt that we accomplished that is by clustering together plantings along the corner of the property line here. So if anyone's coming in, their headlights should be blocked by the buffering trees that are here. And, the existing buffer that is maintained here, the sidewalk won't impact those at all. I think the school's point of view would be that the existing plantings are substantial, and that, the proposed improvements as far as plantings in this corner should stop headlights from coming through this corner. So we felt like that was enough there. But again, if we need to try to plant trees underneath the existing trees, see if I have a picture. I'll see if I have a picture of that. So these would be the existing evergreen trees. I think it would be hard pressed to try to plant something else underneath there, and there is an existing fence that runs along the backside. This is the area we'll be adding an additional, I think 15 to 20 of those evergreen trees. Number 6, for hours of operation should be established for use. Our plan, I think, would be that lights go off at 9 o'clock. It sounds like there might be some interest to have that 9 o'clock for the stadium field, and then maybe 10 o'clock, or maybe there's a request for the tennis court lights to go a little bit later. We're fine with 9, but if community use requests up to 10, maybe it could be a condition of approval that they could reach out to the person in charge of the lights or the town and request that they will stay on until 10 for a specific date requested, but we're good with 9. Ensuring that any loudspeakers before or during the game should be directed away from the property lines. We totally agree with that. The speakers that would be proposed would only be going on these 2 light poles on the visitor side of the field and point basically at the home side bleachers and not be directed towards any of the abutting properties. There should be no further encroachment into the buffer where the proposed extended pedestrian walk is to be located, and that walk be significantly screened from abutting property. Again, we're happy to do whatever's needed as far as screening to be able to satisfy the community, but with the existing of the trees and vegetated buffer that's there, and that we won't have to take down any trees to be able to put in the sidewalk. People walk there now. I'm not sure that one is totally necessary. Additionally, with existing fencing and whatnot that's already currently there.
Could you show us where this walk is on the drawing?
Yep, that would be this walkway here on the left side, going around the existing parking lot. The only reason that is being proposed is so we don't have students being dropped off and walking through a parking lot, or athletes walking back to and from the field, and having to walk through the parking lot. We want to provide, a safe means of access to be able to get in and around the site without walking through the parking lot. Moving on to number 9, establishment and enforcement of significant rules regarding the usage of the field, including hours, access, decibel levels, and supervision requirements for both board and sanctioned events for community users. As far as rules, I think the school probably has a significant amount of rules that go along with current events. I think we would be looking to maintain the majority of those rules.
Are you still on number 9?
Still on number 9, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
As far as the decibel levels, I'm not a sound expert, but I think that is something we might be able to review in the field. As far as actual announcements, to be able to get a clear level of sound, it might be a little bit higher than that. As far as music being played before, after, or during games, that might be something that could be kept to a lower level. But maybe that's something that we review in the field. A point of contact should be identified who is responsible for addressing complaints and concerns for the abutters if the project moves forward. There are current rules, but they have not been enforced and complaints have not been addressed. I believe any complaint can be submitted to the town and school. I believe all the contact information is available online. I'm not sure if you want to have a specific person, but I think all the information is available to the public to be able to make any complaints that they might deem necessary. Number 11, cutoff lighting for all parking lot lights and walkway lights such that the lighting shines downward and does not bleed over the property lines. The photometric plan shows that. We have no photometrics or at levels next to the property lines. Everything does shine down. Number 12, the intended number of nighttime events in which the field will be used should be identified by the applicant. I believe that the plan will be to put into the local paper and to submit online when all of the games are going to be for the facility. So all that information will be on the website. The difficult part about trying to limit it to a specific number of events is if a team is doing well and they want to have, they've qualified for a state game or a state tournament game, they would, if you said they can only have 3 games and that would be their 4th game, or something like that, it would be hard to make it so that we're doing all of this so the kids can have games, and then limit the number of games would be difficult. But I think by doing the 9 o'clock turnoff, I think that would go a long way. I don't think I specified it when I was talking this time about how the lighting system operates, but it's not like you have to go and turn them on and off physically like you might do at the baseball field or at the Little League field. It's done through an app on your phone. There's a phone number you can be used. You can preset them ahead of time, and various school staff will be able to have that number and that website. So they will have multiple people that can turn them on and off. It's not like you have to have maintenance staff, sitting there till the end of the game and turn them off. The other nice part about the way that these lights operate is they have a high, medium, and low setting. So when it is going to be time that you need to turn the lights off, you can go from a higher medium setting down to low, still have adequate lighting for people to get off the site, but it gives you a visual indication that it's time to go. So much better operating procedure for proposed lights. Number 13, all events using the new field should have security and where necessary law enforcement to oversee crowds and enforcement rules. You guys do that now? number 13.
Yeah, if you're not comfortable speaking for the school, someone else can answer that.
Yes, good evening to the commission. Frank Rizzuto, principal of the high school. Yeah, currently there's always a site supervisor. In most instances, there's at least one administrator. We have safety officers as well. So that's as a matter of course, and it would be no different.
Yeah, the applicant should eliminate the usage of portable external loudspeakers at existing field once the new facility is open. The external speakers are being used in addition to public address system currently maintained on the existing field. So we'll still need the loudspeakers on the existing field because games would potentially be going on at the same time or practices. However, large-scale events would not be going on at the same time. But the need for speakers would still be there on the existing field. For instance, if we had a track meet going on while somebody was having, practice on the new field, you would still need the speaker system. So we're going to leave that in place. I think that.
Could you go back to the slide that has the multipurpose field on it?
This one?
That's great. That's great. So to the commissioner that asked a very high-level summary, what is the community gaining from this? I can hopefully reiterate some of the things. Chris has done an excellent job going into the planning and a lot of the school operations, but there's sort of a day in the life here that I don't want to get lost. I mean, first of all, the addition of the tennis courts. As a fellow tennis player myself, they're tired. That is a huge asset for the town to get with this. Pickleball is the fastest rising sport in the country, I'm pretty sure in the world, so that is being very responsive to that. I will tell you, day in the life, the addition of a second roadway into the campus is critical. Anyone that has ever driven by the campus around 7 o'clock or 7:15 in the morning knows that. Anyone that has driven by the campus around 2 o'clock in the afternoon knows that. To use the word congestion, that is an understatement, so that is sorely needed. I want to point out the addition of a potential additional field with the lighting is great, but the key word I want to focus on is additional, because an additional synthetic field is a game changer, pardon the pun, in terms of sports. But what happens here is we know just a few days ago it was very rainy. In the fall, we caught a lot of rain, and so the day in the life of sports, it becomes challenging for our teams to be competitive with other towns. Case in point, this visual is great. In the upper right-hand corner, you see our multi-purpose field, which is natural grass, and when it rains a lot, that field is unusable. In front of the high school campus, so if you look on the right-hand side there, on the rectangular part, that grassy area that you can see is very yellowed. It looks like Wimbledon after a couple of weeks of tennis there. Those fields are not of higher quality, but when it rains a lot, they are off the books. They cannot be used. So the high school programs are reduced to the lone synthetic field to be shared by multiple programs. So for example, in the fall, that means our athletic director has to create a schedule for the teams for the boys soccer team, the girls soccer team, the field hockey team to share. Their practice time is cut into. Sometimes those grass fields are not accessible for days. And so other high schools who we fare against have multiple fields, in most instances synthetic in nature. The rain doesn't deter them. And so when we're limited to that one field, and we're just kind of going into every season crossing our fingers and hoping Mother Nature cooperates, and we know full well that it usually doesn't. So that's a huge gain, because not only does that apply to the high school program, but it also applies to the community programming as well. So the additional field in being synthetic in nature is critical. So.
Great, thank you very much. Chris, I just have one more question. In this entire project, is what we're calling the Wapping Annex impacted at all?
The physical structure is not impacted at all, but the surrounding areas for access will be improved. Currently, the sidewalks are limited. The ability to get in and around the existing parking lots, you have to walk through parking lots, so it's very dated. The proposed improvements will help the safety measures to get in and out of that building and around that building.
But the physical structure stays as is? Yeah. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernstein. Commissioner Cavagna. Surely. Yes.
This may be part of the record.
Yes.
Yeah,
David Shaken again. This may be part of the record from the last meeting, but what it depicts is the view from my client's property towards where the walkway is going
Is
to
that
be.
the one through the trees?
Yeah, and there's not much there. We really need a
right.
buffer there.
Well, that's why yeah, okay.
Do you need another copy of this?
it was part of the record that they
It's part of the
received.
record, yeah.
And again, I apologize because I wasn't here last time. Thank you.
Thank you. So I was not at the last public hearing for this. I watched through, made sure I got all the clarifying points, but if I ask something that has already been clarified, just please let me know. So first and foremost, when I saw the presentation of this back in January, one of the biggest things that stuck out to me was that, and I'm happy there are crosswalks now, but I'm not sure if you guys would ever consider raised crosswalks for safety reasons, for the speed limits. I'm talking about the additional access that is given along, yes, that road right there. I'm not sure if there would be room for 1 or 2 raised crosswalks there.
Yep, so as a point of clarification, we're happy to add additional notation, but, excuse me. The 3 crosswalks that are shown there will be raised crosswalks.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Check that off. Next thing that I'm curious about, and I'm not sure if it was said in some memo, I don't have the paper in front of me, but I'm curious about the old, or I'm not going to say old, but the current seating capacity of the current football field compared to the one that's being proposed. Are there going to be more seats, less seats, roughly the same?
We're maintaining the same number of seats. The home site bleacher has about 1,000, visitor bleachers has about 300. We'll be maintaining those as part of this project.
Awesome. Next question. So the current location of where, I should say, where the tennis is being proposed to move to, currently from my time in the high school a couple years ago, that was the area in the fall where archery sets were set up for the fall. And of course, during that time, football season is during the fall. And so there's limited area of where you can move the archery sets. And it's just a very nitpick question that I'm really curious about. Is there any planning, if the high school does continue with archery, where they would move those archery sets? Would it be to the field on the other side? But at the same time, I also know that they use that field for football as well. So I'm just curious on that.
Great question. Your memory's a good one. Yeah, so the current thinking would be to put it across the street. So right now it would be to the left of the exiting driveway. It would go, the archery would go to the right side of it.
Okay, thank you. Next question. So we talked about the Wapping Little League field, and proud to say I played there 10 years ago. But there's also an additional basketball court that was there, and I'm not sure if you guys touched upon it already, if there's a plan with the town to either rebuild it or move it somewhere else. I'm just not sure if there's a long-term plan for that.
Yeah, so similar to the baseball field, the town has been in talks with the recreation department to find an alternate location for that basketball court. There wasn't a great location on site, so they're looking at potentially across the street or maybe down at Nevers, but somewhere within the vicinity of the site, fairly close to it, but they are looking at an alternate location for that in town.
All right, thank you. Next question. You guys talked earlier about the parent drop-off, and I'm just curious, and you may have said it and I wasn't fully hearing it, but the parents will be allowed to use the new additional entrance. Is that correct?
So yes, so this visual kind of captures part of it. So we think what we believe is going to organically happen is that the northern part of the screen, we would be coming from Sullivan Avenue, traveling south on, again, I'm just using the schematic in front of us, traveling down Ayers Road and turning a right into the new driveway. That's where a lot of cars are going to turn in. Parents coming from the Nevers side going into Ayers would more than likely go into the current existing driveway, so you have double access points for parents to queue. It's honestly going to work more of a matter of convenience. I'm sure this will be part of communications to families going into the next school year, or into, if the plan is approved and when this is constructed, whatever school year it is, as to what the commute plan would be for families.
Awesome, thank you. Staying on the topic of parking, so originally those two lots, and currently right now they do not connect. On the bottom left is that big student parking lot. To add some context, that's where students park. They pay a permit, $100-something to park there. Now that those two parking lots are being connected, is the student permit going to extend to the other parking lot that is at the annex?
So a little bit of an update from since the time that you were a student there. That is no longer the student lot. That is a faculty lot. It would be the plan that if this would be approved, it would remain the faculty lot. You have more experienced drivers going in there and settling before the parent drop-off kind of picks up. And as Chris mentioned before, those cars would be settled. Unlike your time when you attended the school, in front of the school, that is where the new student parking is, in addition to the current annex lot. And as you might recall, the upper and lower Dupre fields are also available for students to park, and they don't need a permit to do that.
Okay, just want to clarify that as well. And a few more questions as well. You guys mentioned, an additional administrator on staff right now, or just an administrator looking over the current football field for security reasons. With this new field, is that going to require an additional administrator to hang down near the annex area? I'm just not sure if that's going to be like a staffing logistical question.
It all depends on what the event is. In most instances, there's not going to be double booking. So if there's a marquee event, for instance, if there's a football game taking place, nothing else is going to be scheduled. So the administrator that would have been at the previous synthetic field is now going to be stationed here.
Awesome. One or two more questions, and I'll pass off the microphone. So we talked about a point of contact if this plan were to move forward. This may be a question for the individual that brought up the document, but when you say point of contact, I assume that is for the construction, or is that the current management to oversee the field? And that'll influence my next question.
It's to oversee the use once constructed. And it needs to be someone that's available off hours when school is not in session. It can't just be, a faculty member at the school.
So point of contact for both, for the construction and for just maintaining it when it's fully built.
Correct. In other words, someone to handle complaints that the field is not being used in accordance with the conditions of the approval or in accordance with the site plan.
Awesome, thank you. And that ushers in my very last question. Do we currently have a point of contact for the current football field? I'm not sure if that'd be for Principal Rizzuto.
My client's shaking his head no. Mr. Hill says there is not.
Yeah.
Can we let the school answer that? Mr. Rizzuto?
I know this in the last few years, and a part of that was impaired because we went through a COVID cycle for a while there, but most recently, so our athletic director is typically someone that is contacted with. I believe the Hill family was in contact with him in the last 5 years during my time as principal on at least one occasion. Typically, there's been a pretty cordial relationship there, and so I think depending on what the nature of the concern is, and that if this plan comes to fruition, that it could be the form of the athletic director, it could be whomever the principal is, the incoming principal, it could be the town, depending on how that looks and feels. I won't be able to speak to that transitioning into a new role come July.
Of course, thank you. That wraps up my questions.
Commissioner Viteri?
I don't want to go over a lot of what's already been going over, but Chris, I had a question. Currently, there's 6 tennis courts that are going to be replaced and moved in with 7 now. I'm not a big fan of having people all day long crossing Nevers Road to play tennis. What about the thought of making only 6 tennis courts to replace the 6 tennis courts, and where the 7th court is, make that additional parking?
So we did explore that idea. The main reason that we landed on 7 is because as part of the high school curriculum or high school matches, there's 7 matches that go on, which means that somebody has to wait until the other matches are complete to be able to begin their match. So when a school is coming to have their matches, that means everyone has to stay and wait until all of the matches are complete. So it could extend the span of time by an hour, 2 hours, even up to 3 hours for the level of that games. The things that we considered as far as parking was to have parking for the immediate need with ADA accessible parking spaces there and the number of parking spaces we were able to fit, with overflow parking being able to be up at the higher level of the school and get down through some of the existing sidewalks. It is closer than the walkway that's currently there now, which basically just goes over the grass field. But with that, with the majority of the community use being after school hours, the upper right-hand corner of this picture parking lot will be available for people to use as well. So there will be a safe access to get down there.
I can't emphasize enough about the importance of an additional tennis court. It truly, forgive the additional phrase of game changer, but as the gentleman pointed out, there are many neighboring schools that have at least 7 courts, in most instances more. For someone that coached one of the varsity teams for 12 years, that's a long wait time. When you only have 6 courts, as Chris alluded to, you're waiting for a free court by the time that match goes on, and if that goes 3 sets, and what you're trying to do as a courtesy to those varsity players is keep them unobstructed to other recreational players. So you need at least 2 or 3 courts to not be used by community members so that that match can resolve in the conditions that it began in, which means that could be a really late night. 7 courts allows a match to resolve that much quicker, which allows the community to access all 7 courts that much quicker. It truly is a critical component to this plan.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And then with the pickleball courts, parking for that is where?
We would anticipate people walking down from the upper parking area here through the sidewalk and through the crosswalk to be able to access those. There are additionally the crosswalks through Nevers and sidewalks to be able to get over to here as well. We did look at potentially trying to stripe in various additional parking spaces, being as how this is the main access to exit the site and there's many buses and things like that happen. We weren't super comfortable with the idea of temporarily striping those. So I guess it would be the upper area here. And if it is after school hours, I think there might be no parking signs there now, but we might be able to consider no parking during school hour signs or something like that.
I was just thinking, because a lot of, you said pickleball is one of the growing things. A lot of the people who play are more my age, and I'm not sure we're going to go wandering all over and crossing streets as well as everybody else, but that's just a personal feeling. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you very much. I'm good.
I have no comments. I've seen this presentation 4 times between Town Council, Board of Ed, here, there, everywhere. Well thought out, well planned, and I have nothing.
Commissioner Dexter?
I have some numbers questions, and I think Commissioner Cavaniero alluded to this, but I couldn't hear the answer. Sure. The current turf field that we play our football games on now is, what's the seating capacity? A number.
Yeah, the home side bleachers is 1,000 seats.
1,000 seats.
Visiting
okay.
side bleachers is 300 seats.
1,000 plus 300.
We'll be maintaining those as part of the proposed improvements.
So the new one would be the same?
Same.
So they're exactly the same size, give or take some frilly things around the edges?
Same number of seats, the configuration slightly different.
Okay. And I know we don't play evening games now, so we really can't take into account the number of people who might attend, but are the day games full? Do we know? Or I'm sure the principal knows.
There are, again, these last 5 years, it's not a full picture, but in my time as an associate principal and as my time as a teacher before that, it's very rare that they're full. Okay. That's a judgment-free statement. It just means that there's enough seating to accommodate the folks, even including in some high-profile games. The times that we've been in a playoff situation and would be competing at night, there's been a couple instances where our home game, forgive the air quotes, had to be scheduled at a different site because we don't have lights on the field.
Okay.
So I think to your point, I think the essence of that, will a lighted field draw more folks? Yes.
I hope so.
There's also going to be some more additional parking spots. I believe Chris said in the last presentation, it's going to be a net gain of somewhere between 45 to 60. I think I'm in the right range on top. And I have never seen the campus exhausted with regard to parking for a sports activity.
good.
In other words, there's ample parking to accommodate, because you're typically putting in 2 to 3, sometimes 4 people in a vehicle.
Okay, thank you very much. I just have one other follow-up, and I know it's the big elephant in the room, but there's a finite amount of space in this whole plan, around the high school, and we know we're going to need more room. So has that been taken into account as you take over more land?
Yeah, so the school is aware of certain areas that may need to be redeveloped for parking and additional access in the future. Some of the areas that we have reviewed are kind of the front portion of the annex building, the grassed area sort of here where my cursor is, directly adjacent to Irish Road. And then, if the need, does continue to arise that additional spaces are needed, we may look at doing some of the areas just along the existing practice field. That area may become more prevalent to accommodate that.
I'm really thinking more classroom space. I mean, I guess you could go
sorry.
up, but, just.
Yeah, my understanding was that once the annex building was brought online, that the need for additional classroom space has been taken care of, but.
I think for the, I won't speak for way down the road, but to accommodate at least the next 200 to 300 additional, there is more than enough classroom space to master schedule and have kids attend classes, for sure.
Okay,
For sure.
good to know, good to know. One last request, we have to have a marching band, or else it's done.
We'll put that as a condition.
Condition of approval, yes. Marching.
Commissioner, you're done? Commissioner Lamont?
Yeah, thank you. I just have a few questions, mainly for you, Chris. The light towers, you're going to have 4 light towers around this field, 2 in the west, 2 on the east. I'd like to think that the technology today with sports lighting is a bit different than what was out there 20 years ago. And the reason I say this, because I might repeat myself here, but when Rockville High School has a game, I'm well aware of it, and I live in a different town, so can you explain a little bit, because I know there's concerns about light going into neighboring properties and all, and of course, when you have light towers for a sporting event, they're pretty bright, so.
Yep, so parking lot lights aside, those are lower, those,
Right,
you don't.
dark sky compliant for parking lots, but yeah, sure.
The main difference between the proposed athletic field lighting system and the existing athletic field lighting systems that you may be familiar with, both at the Little League complex and across the street at the baseball field, those are metal halide systems. So what those do is, those basically push the light out in an effort to light up as much space as they can because they're not very directed. The new systems are full cutoff LED systems. So they basically push the light down and it's extremely directed just to the field areas that are being proposed. We did a project at Bunnell High School. Unfortunately, I don't think I have a picture of that, where we had like a before and an after. And the reason I bring that up is because my sister lives in the street just next to where the stadium field is, and she used to be able to cut her grass at night. Versus with the new LED system, you almost have to add more lighting outside of the field space because they're so directed. And when people get used to that metal halide basically lighting up everything around the space, when you would convert, you actually need to add more parking lot lighting. So it's extremely directed to the site.
Okay, all right, I just wanted people to hear this. Second question I have is, I guess directional sound. I know even in audio too, the technology today is far superior than 20 years ago with audio drift and whatnot. You have directional sound. I'm not trying to spend the town's money, but that's something too that could be possibly brought into the project. That way you're not booming scores and whatnot and music into neighboring properties, but that's something that perhaps should be looked at as well.
I'm sure we could look at additional types of sound and configurations for that. The current plan would be to hang the speakers on the poles on the upper side of the field so that they can only be sort of directed towards the school and towards the home bleachers so that they're not kind of blaring towards towards the property lines around it.
Okay. And I blame myself, but the audio in this room is a little bit echoing here, so if I missed something, repeating something, don't mind me. All right, the buffer around, we brought this up last time, around the south side of the football field and, of course, the west side. I understand plantings and all, but will a berm actually be part of that, horizon land, so to speak? I know you do have some civil engineering work out here, and you are moving some dirt around, so.
So on the south side, the west, the kind of left side of the screen, we did not plan to have a berm on that side. We do have one on the right side. I will screen back to the grading plan. So the right side along Ayers Road, that will be the planned berm area for any of the topsoil and stuff that will be on site will be kind of placed there as both a cost savings measure for the town, but also to help screen the people that have direct visual from higher than the field. Looking down at the field, we wanted to give them as much of a buffer as we could because they actually sit higher to the site than the surrounding areas on Mountain View.
All right, I do want to stress too, this is, just a comment that when we have plantings for buffering and all, it does take a little time for them to grow. Something I've been involved with in my previous career, and it does, it's almost like a 5-year plan. It does take a while to fill in. And my last comment really, this is because I've been to these games, I've been to the homecoming, and are these bleachers are made out of aluminum?
Yes.
All right, so what happens is, and it's going to bring us up, and probably myself, I'm guilty of this, but when the home team is winning, people tend to stomp their feet on these things, and it's loud. So these things do happen during games, and I just want to bring this up. And it's something that I'm not sure if it's a mitigation technique with that, but the current bleachers as they are, this does happen.
I mean, I'm not sure there's much we're going to be able to do to accommodate trying to decrease the sound levels from something like that. The only thing I guess I would say is that there are currently, the tennis courts there. There are currently a baseball field there. So the majority of things that, would be loud around the site currently exist today. While this will, potentially have that as a cause for concern, there's really not a whole lot we're going to be able to do to mitigate that. Same as, if the crowd gets really loud and is yelling and screaming, the only thing we could say is the lights will be off by 9, so we'll be quiet by then.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Willett.
Yep, just 2 questions. First is the tennis courts and pickleball.
Mm-hmm.
Would they be usable during the school day or when there were kids on school property? By the public, not the school.
Let's let Mr. Risotto answer that.
Sure. So as is the case now, a lot of times if high school program is not taking place on the tennis courts, the community can access. So I've seen tennis players access the current courts. So I think the answer to that would be yes. If there's not a PE course or anything like that happening on the courts.
And the proximity to a school, though, even though the annex is there, is a little different than having it 50 yards from the front door of the school. And the new location is going to be much closer to the physical school itself. Would you agree with that?
If it is the feeling of the town to not have community members access while school is in session, then signage can be put up to reflect that.
Okay. So it's not necessarily an asset for the town, the pickleball and tennis court. It's an asset for the school.
I think it's an asset for both, because during the evening to have an additional tennis court that is state-of-the-art and current, to have the addition of pickleball courts that don't exist, I would see that as a gain for both the school and the community.
Okay, fair enough. And the last question is the noise complaints that have been proffered, why haven't they been responded to, or why has there been no action taken on prior complaints?
Pardon, I didn't mean to interrupt your question. So the concerns that the Hill family brought up, which have not been recent, were addressed. There was a conversation between, to my knowledge, a conversation between the Hill family and Mr. Satulik, our athletic director.
Look, I'd ask,
So I think it was to address the screening in between the Hill property and the field. So, and that one topic was probably the subject of multiple conversations to help. There was a concern there. So it wasn't not addressed.
okay, thank you.
There's a sound buffer.
Sound buffer, yeah.
No further questions.
Commissioner Boganski.
Yeah, I think most of my questions were answered, but I have two real quick ones, and you actually made. So if there's, I would recommend that there's some type of protocol on turnaround time for complaints, because now thinking about where the tennis courts are proposed, those residents there could possibly, right, where they're not used to having tennis courts, right? So we'd want to make sure that there was some type of communication and how quickly someone would turn around and respond to that. And then my last is pickleball. Did I hear no lights for the pickleball courts?
No lights.
Now, just because I've had kids play football and attend the high school there, and all the hopes for fields before, in the future, will that already, I think it was discussed before, like will the wiring while all this is happening kind of be put there? Just in the event in the future there's a reason to have lights there?
Yeah, so as far as lights to be able to light the pickleball courts, those wouldn't be substantially different than the type of lights you would just need for a parking lot. They're much smaller, they're lower, the courts themselves are much smaller, versus if you think about the lights you need for, say, the football field, those are the substantial ones that we need the requests for. I think we also have a request in there to have lights within, I think it's 50 feet of the property line. I forget the exact description in the project description. But the location of those courts basically meets all the needs for being able to have lights added in the future.
Okay, and then I just think that the baseball field, it's still in use, right? There are kids, and I know the project's not happening tomorrow, but between the baseball fields, and I was at the town council meeting where they talked a bit about the basketball courts, it was important to folks about the idea of having access to this. So I'd hope that once this was, like, this plan, it was going to be planned out already, so that would be ready for kids as well.
Yep, the only reason we haven't brought development of those areas as part of this application is those will be a separate application through the town once they finalize the location, but they have been talking about those extensively.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, I would like to, if you don't mind, I have a bunch of questions I'd also like to go through, and then I'll probably have some for you as well. So last time I brought up the issue of pickleball noise, which reportedly is very difficult to deal with, and we more or less, at least I more or less agreed that pickleball 500 feet from the nearby residence was probably adequate, but we also have a concern that we might find out it isn't adequate, and I asked that the sound abatement be shown on your drawings. I don't see that. How's the sound abatement going to be done, and can we get it put on the drawings?
We're happy to put that on the plans as a condition of approval. I think one of the things that we were anticipating as part of that condition of approval was to get kind of what the exact wording wants to be. I think somewhere along the lines of once the courts are installed and in use, to go to the nearby properties and see if it is adequate or not.
Well, that was the idea. I mean, we're hoping that it isn't an issue. So we wouldn't want the sound abatement put on now. But we want to know how it's going to be resolved, if it needs to be resolved. So that's really what we're looking for here.
Yep, so, we're happy to add that to the plans as part of a condition of approval.
There are fences right around the courts. Would you be putting it on those fences, or would you build additional structures?
Yeah, it would be attached directly to the fence adjacent to the pickleball courts.
The fences that are already on the plan?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. We went through Attorney Shipman's letter, and I'll go back to that in a minute. I appreciate that. It looks like we have a better alignment of the Aries exit with Sunset Terrace. It was a little offset before. It looks like you moved that.
Yeah, we tried to tee that up as much as possible while not impacting that light pole.
Since it's unlikely that you're going to build this, that the school will be able to build this summer, because we don't have a referendum in time, it seems to me that at this point, we really ought to be looking at, you're going to be a year down the road, we should have all the issues with EV charging resolved. So I'd really like to see those shown as being built as part of the plan. Since they're looking at EV charging for all the other schools, this one ought to be right in there with that. Well, you have a location shown on where you're going to put them, but let's build them. So the EVSEs that you show on LA1, they don't seem to have any accessible spaces.
Sorry, say that one more time for me. Say the question one more time.
Okay. EV chargers, at least one of them, needs to be accessible, not necessarily handicap restricted, but accessible in its design. So we have EV chargers shown in the lower right quadrant of LA1, and none of them appear to be any wider. So they need to be, at least one of them needs to be accessible.
Good point. No problem.
Where will an ambulance park? I know you seem to have indicated that the emergency access is in the upper, I'm looking again at LA1, in the upper right corner of the drawing. Oh, okay. They'll be in those parking spaces, but those are, oh, okay. Those are also handicap accessible. My wife has currently been using handicap accessible spaces, although she's getting to the point where she won't need that much longer. But they're often full, just the way life is. So I'm visualizing someone who needs to use one of those spaces coming down this drive and they're full, and now they have to do a U-turn and get out of there to find some other place to park somewhere on the site. I mean, there's really no, it seems like it's very awkward for someone who needs to use a accessible space to find it's full, and then they don't have any way to get out of there. I don't know how to fix that, but I'll just make that comment.
I mean, I guess I would say to that if they do find that those areas are being consistently full, there is potentially space through that access path to add additional accessible parking spaces. I think that the quantity we put on there now is based on the number of seats on the visitor side.
Yeah. I know oftentimes those numbers are not really reflective of what's really needed, but I don't know what to say.
We have plenty of space to add a couple extra parking spaces there.
How wide is that drive?
15 feet.
What?
15.
1.5?
Yeah.
So it's, if you've got one of these big vans, it can be a little difficult to turn around in there too, right?
I mean, a typical driveway is 12 feet wide on the side that you would be going on. If you are backing out through double, it might be 24, but being as how there's not going to be significant traffic going back and forth, we felt 15 would be an appropriate distance. Really just because it's for maintenance emergency vehicles and specifically for the handicap accessible seating or accessible parking.
I don't know, we may think about asking for more spaces there just because of the difficulty of dealing with not having any left. Okay. There was supposedly a revised traffic study, but did we get that? Oh, we got a short memo, right? Yeah, okay. So there was an issue raised to the parking near the pickleball courts, and I mean, I guess I'm asking, why don't we just build a few parking spaces next to them? What's that field used for? I see some markings there, but.
Yeah, so currently the field is used for practice football, practice lacrosse, multiple different practice events. As part of the tennis being built, we're going to be moving the throwing events over there to that practice field location as well. So it just gets a little bit jumbled. There is potentially some space to maybe reconfigure those throwing events a little bit, and maybe add a couple of parking spaces there. Yeah, we felt with the number of parking spaces on the site that it would be within an appropriate distance to be able to get over there, but we're open as part of a condition of approval to add 3, 4, 5 parking spaces over there. I think it's doable.
My concern is that if you look at the distances to the parking we're talking about having them use, and you look at the parking for the community center, I think people are going to be tempted to park at the community center and walk across. So that's going to create further parking limitations. I mean, that parking lot is often full, and I just hate to make it worse. So I think we really have to either look hard at the suggestion of putting parking along the side of that drive with some restrictions on hours, or
I think we're happy
yeah.
to entertain that as a condition of approval and work with the town to finalize the location of this.
I actually had one more pickleball question. We looked at the distance between the pickleball courts and the residences, but they're actually much closer to the school building. So I'm not quite familiar with what's in the school building, but do we know that that noise from the pickleball courts isn't going to be a problem for the classrooms that are near there? And I guess I'd ask Mr. Rizzuto if he could comment.
I appreciate the question. No, I don't imagine that's going to be any more additional noise than we already field over the course of the day between the lawns being tended to and other outside activities. So that would just be added to the mix. So, and a lot of the high school, where that is adjacent to, the entrance goes into a lot of the basement program, which is already shielded, and that's where a lot of our music programs, our woodworking program is. No one's going to hear any pickleball happening there.
Okay, great, thank you. So I guess I would ask Attorney Shakane to come forward now.
Shaken, yes, thank you.
So why do you want a taller fence, higher than 6 feet?
Well, it's more of a deterrent for people to climb over, and it provides a greater security and buffer, and what is there already is an 8-foot fence.
Okay. Now, you also made a comment that you thought that the existing fence is not on town property, but on your client's property?
Correct.
Do we have a survey that?
I think the survey that was submitted indicates contrary to that, so.
So we've actually, the town staff has gone out and you know
Well,
where the
maybe
marker?
Chris maybe can address, they submitted a survey that was field located, so.
So where are you getting the idea that this is not on town property?
My client tells me that the property descriptions in his deed indicates that the fence is on his property, and it's been there for 30 years.
Okay, so you have a deed, but is it with an adequate survey, or?
I don't, do we have a survey? Yeah, we don't have a survey at this time.
So I think I'm inclined to accept the fact that we have our own survey, a new survey. Staff has gone out, and we found the markers out there. So we found the markers. I think I'm going to say that I'm not convinced by that unless you somehow come up with further evidence. So we went through the Attorney Shipman's letter. Can I say that this supersedes the earlier letter? This new letter?
Yes, because it addresses the current
Yeah.
revised plan.
Good, okay. Michelle, one of the issues is the noise level and a proposal for 50 decibel. I was looking at our zoning, the noise ordinance is actually a town ordinance, right?
It
It's
is
not
a
in-
town ordinance. We have no noise levels within the regulations. So, I mean, every project should be subject to the town noise ordinance. So I wouldn't want to put anything more restrictive than that within our approvals.
So do we know what the level is across the property line?
I don't have it off the top of my head. I don't have it with me. I can certainly get it for the commission.
Okay, so anyway, I think what we should just say is that we're going to expect the school to follow the noise ordinance. I don't know, do you have a problem with that? Or? I'm sorry, if you wish to speak, you have to come up to the microphone and identify yourself.
Mr. Hill indicates that he believes the ordinance is 45 decibels at night, and that's fine with him.
Okay. I don't have it memorized, but I'll take your word for it. And there's a daytime and a nighttime, and there's impulse and continuous noise limits. But oftentimes, they're probably not what everyone would like. So the buffers that have been discussed, the new buffers, are you happy with them, or?
We're not.
What?
We're not.
Okay, and let's just be real specific of where they need to be enhanced.
Okay, they need to be enhanced in two places. If we could get the schematic that was up before. Thank you. No problem. Yeah, that's good.
If you had is there a pointer or something, or a mouse or something they can?
It's just, it doesn't really work on the glass, so you gotta kind of do it here. So,
Okay. Doesn't work on the glass. I'm having no luck with, doesn't look like that it's on.
We don't have, nobody has a laser or anything. Oh, there we go.
And if I go slow, there should be staggered plantings here, buffer, and we're proposing trees as well as rhododendron shrubs. And then-
Evergreen trees.
Yes. And then, I lost it. If you see right here where I'm pointing, the plan shows the plantings ending right there. They should
Can
extend.
you wiggle that a little bit so I can see what?
I'm moving the mouse, there we go.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Right here, it should extend across to provide a buffer between the walkway and my client's property.
And why do we need a buffer for the walkway?
Because there's going to be cars in the parking lot and people walking on the walkway, and it's basically, my client's backyard.
Okay,
in effect.
so does the project have a problem with these two requests? The
I think one of the concerns that we had going out on site and looking at proposing landscaping is we want things to survive out there, and there's not a lot of sun that comes in there. So, the recommendation from staff to Chris was what kind of shown on the plans. Now, there may be some other lower lying buffers that gets along the walkway that could be added, but, a real concern of ours is adding a double row of trees that don't survive out there. So some of that is part of the consideration of the staff recommendation that's been incorporated.
Okay. What about along the sidewalk?
The picture that was shown earlier, those trees come pretty close. I mean, we may have to take some trees back to add trees. I don't know if that always makes sense, but we can certainly look to see if there's some recommendation along that sidewalk that may be some understory planting that will survive. Our goal really isn't to plant things that won't survive.
Okay. I guess you heard the answer there.
I did.
We can look at it. Okay, you quoted section 624B in the 5-year, and I think Commissioner LeBlanc pointed out that some of these things take time to actually fill in.
That's understood.
Yeah. Again, we have 8 to 10 foot evergreen plantings, but we got a concern that they won't survive. Is that? Yeah.
No, the double row, we didn't want to suggest a double row of evergreens because that would really be too much in that general area. So that's why some of the shrubs are being suggested.
So there's a request for hours, and I think I heard a 10 p.m. time on the football field. Yeah. 10 p.m. Oh, right, 10 p.m. on the tennis courts and 9 p.m. on the field. Would you come up and? This is again Chris speaking.
Yep, Chris Hulk. So the plan would be lights would go off at 9 o'clock on the stadium field, the football field. And we're typically fine with 9 o'clock on the tennis courts. However, with hearing some of the public, we're also fine going with 10 o'clock there, and those can be preset to be turned off at certain times.
I do appreciate the idea that they would dim first for safety reasons and then shut off. Is that how does that work for you? If you're going to speak, please identify yourself.
Hill, 64, 60, 50, 40, 36 Mountain View Road.
Okay. If you go next to the microphone, please.
As far as the buffer up by the school, there's a current buffer was put there in 91. There were 7 trees. Now there's 4. They have since piled snow up on them. All the trees have dropped branches at least 12, 15 feet up. So there is currently no buffer at all. I could look in my bedroom window from driving right by.
Yeah, we've seen that. We've seen that picture, and I agree with you. That's not
so
adequate.
if they have to take down those trees and put up new ones for them to survive, that's fine. If they can fit something out closer to the parking lot, that's fine, and not dump snow on it, they'll survive. They're hardy. They'll grow. As far as the property line, I will speak to, you said that, Michelle, that they were going to put the fence where that current 8-foot fence angles in and attach to that and go down?
They're going to try to put it as close to the property line as possible, so it's on the town's property.
So they'll, okay, so John was out there, Caldwell, and he said that putting it where this line is presently, they would have to take down quite a bit of trees, so he mentioned putting it like where that fence is now or a little bit in, so for the height. And so the other trees that he plants up there, they'll have room to grow.
Yeah, it's certainly going to have to be worked out in the field, you know, to try to minimize taking trees down. But again, the goal would be to have the fence on the town's property as close to the line as possible to protect both the town's and your property.
The property line on GIS says 146 feet. It's 199 feet, somewhere along the lines. During those 5-year increments that they post the GIS, the line changed. I have no property, no transactions showing that. There's some problems with the map currently. It's the north key is pointing northeast, so I just don't think it's 100% accurate. I had a business there, I had a tree farm, I had horses there. That fence has been there on that line for over 60 years, 30 years of when I had it and when I lived there with my parents. So no one's ever said anything to us about the property line. So I assume that was the property line. There were pins there. I don't know what happened to them because I went up to take a picture of the pins. The pins are gone. So the marking for the property line is actually hammered into a tree. So I don't think they could actually put it on the property line, honestly. So that's what I'm going to say about that.
Okay. Would you please sign in? So I asked if actually, I think those are reasonable hours, so unless you have a significant objection.
No, those are reasonable hours. And the point of contact is important because off-site or out-of-school hours, I mean, on the previous field, the police weren't sure of the rules, even though they were posted. And the shift commander, he did check in the other fields and the rules, and he says, okay, because kids were having boom boxes and stuff like that, outside sources. But as far as point of contact and following the rules is kind of important. I mean, we had 2 town council members and a Board of Education member during the Britain game, and they had the largest high school marching band. It was horrendous, and expect more of the same, and I don't believe we should have them dictating, you know, what we should hear inside our house. And the 2 speakers I'm not talking about getting rid of the whole PA system on the current field. There's just 2 addendum speakers that were added a year later for quote-unquote special events, and it's since become a special event every time they play a game, and we can hear it inside the house. So just if they remove those 2 speakers.
So I think we've heard they're going to remove those speakers, right? Those second louder speakers, right?
Well, that's I didn't hear, I heard Chris, Mr. Holt, say that he didn't think that they would be removed.
So maybe Mr. Rizzuto could come up and address that.
We can certainly take a look at that request, for sure.
Okay. I think that's all I had. Do any other commissioners have anything they want to add? Anybody in the public have anything to add? Do we need to continue this hearing? You think there's
Not
enough?
unless you need any additional information, you can
Okay.
certainly close it.
So you're going to give us some conditions that can be addressing some of the issues we had here?
Certainly,
right?
yep.
Okay. So anybody see any reason to continue the public hearing? I'll accept the motion.
I make a motion that we close this public hearing?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Public hearing is closed at 9:40. Actually, 8:52. What did I say? Got to learn how to read the clock. Okay. So give us a second to move all this paper around. Okay, please take your discussions outside if you're, and we're now going to open. Okay, we're going to open a public hearing for application 24-08P, the medical office building.
Good evening, Chairman Wagner and Vice Chairman Foley. For your record, I'm Peter DeMalley, President and CEO of Design Professionals, Inc., with offices, with offices at 21 Jeffrey Drive in South Windsor. We've been engaged by the applicant, Dr. Kane Karim, to provide civil engineering, landscape architecture, land planning, and land surveying services, and many of those are already well underway or complete. Dr. Vasanth Kankariam is here to your right, in the second row. We affectionately know him in town as Dr. K. Incidentally, for your edification, he's also chairman of the South Windsor, board president of the South Windsor Chamber of Commerce. So he does give back to the community. He is, well, Four Elements Vitality Institute is the applicant. He is proposing to relocate his medical office practice, which is about 700 feet down the street on Sullivan Avenue, just to the north of the Pierce Road intersection, right next to Mitchell Fuel. So he's proposing to relocate from 1199 Sullivan Avenue, his medical practice, to his medical practice known as Four Elements Direct Primary Care, LLC. That short distance to the iconic Collins House that everybody's seen, set back from on the S-curve there, that the town rebuilt with assistance from the state many years ago. Remember that? But that iconic white colonial building, that's set back two-story building, set well back onto the property. It's about a 5-acre site, and he's proposing to relocate his practice there. That building is 155 years old. That means it was built in 1869, which is 4 years after the end of the Civil War and after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. So it could use a lot of help. It will be quite an expensive venture just restoring the house, which is the intent of your regulations that we're applying under. So I'd like to just bring that to your attention. We're trying to keep our costs as low as we can. It's a park-like setting already. We're proposing to do, and I'll show you in a minute, proposing to widen the driveway, improve that, put in dumpster pad and screen that, put in a 20-car parking lot, and some landscaping and some storm drainage systems, and keep it pretty much to that as best we can. But without further ado, I'd like to just introduce Dr. K, and so he could just introduce to you what his medical practice is. It's a very exciting narrative that he has, and I think you'll enjoy hearing him.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Vasanth Kankariam of 162 Cornerstone Drive right here in South Windsor. I'm a primary care physician and owner of Four Elements Direct Primary Care. In addition, as was already mentioned, I serve as the president of the South Windsor Chamber of Commerce. I'm also the medical advisor for the South Windsor Health Department and the South Windsor Public Schools. Last May, we purchased 8 Collins Lane. In the process, the town abandoned Collins Lane to give us the opportunity to apply for the commercial overlay zone. But I want to spend a few minutes to share with everyone a little bit about who we are and what is our vision for this property, to give you perspective. In 2019, right before the pandemic, I left a C-suite executive role to build a vision of healthcare. Four Elements Direct Primary Care was born with no patients, no assets, and no staff, just me. We developed an affordable monthly membership-based primary care practice that is insurance agnostic and costs less than a cup of coffee a day. The vision was to surround our patients with wellness services to keep them healthy instead of feeding the high-cost sick care system. Over the years, we have grown from a team of 1 to adding on services such as massage therapy, clinical hypnosis, nutrition counseling, educational opportunities, fitness coaching, aesthetics, and more, with primary health care as the core. Our Vitality Institute will focus not just on preventing illness, but on promoting wellness. Imagine doing Tai Chi on the front lawn of the property with your doctor to help with osteoarthritis, or doing community acupuncture outside while enjoying the sound of the birds, or even going for a walk with your doctor during your physical, talking about physical activity as opposed to just sitting in a room not doing any. We want this to be our future. Our patients range from teachers, police officers, refugees, lawyers, contractors, farmers, and many business owners and entrepreneurs. About 20% of our patients come from South Windsor, but our reach is as far south as Ridgefield and Westport, as far north as Northampton, Massachusetts, and as far east as Boston. One family even had moved to Florida and refused to give up membership in our practice and flew all the way to South Windsor for their physicals. Our practice is built on 4 major principles. The first is to challenge people to expect more from a failing healthcare system. For many people, especially small business owners, they either cannot afford health insurance or despite having health insurance, they're left functionally uninsured. Connecticut ranks amongst the top in the United States for the percentage of workforce with high deductibles. We help our patients navigate the healthcare system and make cost-effective decisions. And we had the privilege to present our model in a TED Talk in 2020 and receive the Hartford Business Journal Award in 2022 as a healthcare hero for advancement in healthcare innovation. Principle number 2 is to challenge physicians not to succumb to burnout. Physician burnout is between 40 to 60% and have the highest rate of death by suicide. And the wife is calling. There are very few independently owned physician practices in Connecticut, and more are being bought by hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and insurance companies, leaving the question to be answered of who does your doctor work for? We are teaching future physicians how to take control of their lives, their careers, and provide mentorship through summer educational programs for South Windsor pre-med students, as well as partnerships with Connecticut medical schools. Number 3, to redefine what the modern-day community doctor looks like. For us, a doctor is not someone who is in the office all day, but someone who is also visible in the community. We partner with local businesses and community organizations to give educational talks like we will be doing at the South Windsor Senior Center and have done for Connecticut health departments. We believe in looking broadly at healthcare and being involved in the community because primary care happens at the grassroots level. And number 4, to stimulate the economy. We care for employees of many small businesses where even if one employee is out sick, it makes a huge impact on their day. And if that employee can't get in for the next several days or weeks to see their doctor, the business suffers. By partnering with small businesses who can't afford glamorous benefits, we are able to help them give access and allow one small business, such as ours, to support other small businesses so they can remain competitive in the market and are able to hire and retain solid team members. We started the practice in South Windsor because it is our home. We live in South Windsor, our children go to school in South Windsor, and we wanted South Windsor to be the hub of what we do. Our team is also primarily from South Windsor and the surrounding towns. Last year, when we had the opportunity to grow, we had 2 choices. Do we look for space in South Windsor, or do we leave? Neighboring towns had asked us to come there and were willing to give us benefits, but we wanted to stay here. We also didn't want a typical medical office. We didn't want a cookie-cutter building. To me, that's another box. We wanted patients to have an experience. We want them to feel at home. From 2 small subleased rooms to being in the Mitchell building where we are now, we and our patients love our space. The Collins house, to me, is a sanctuary, and while I look at the Collins family and their legacy, yes, I acknowledge it is sad to lose your family home, but at the same time, what we want to do is keep the history. I believe, to me as an immigrant, it is important to me to acknowledge those who came before me, who gave me the opportunity to take their story and move it forward. We met with Kathy Collins and shared with her our vision of being a beacon of innovation in Connecticut. We've met with the neighbors on both sides of the property and have shared with them that we want as minimal disturbance as possible to them. We don't want to tear down the house. We want to preserve it. We don't want to build a condo complex. We want to maintain a park-like feel. We don't want a tax abatement. All we ask for is your support to help a small, local business taking a big risk to realize a big dream. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kay. So our application is a special exception permit under section 5.3 of your regulations, which is the office conversion overlay regulations, which I'll address in a while about how we're meeting the requirements of those regulations. Also, we received some comments from town staff, town engineer, director of planning, and others And I'll address those, I think, after they make their presentation, and respond instead of stealing their thunder. So I think we'll do that later. Let me go to the first exhibit here. And so the subject property, which is just shy of 5 acres in size, in brown is the existing house. And I just want to introduce you to the immediate area around it. So if I can get this to work, hopefully I can. I can't get the cursor working here. You can try it on this. There we go. Okay, so here, this brown speck here is the 155-year-old residence. Incidentally, it's at 1300 Sullivan Avenue is a new address for it because this right here, coming from Sand Hill Road and wrapping around this green island, is the old Collins Lane, and that was abandoned by the town council after receiving endorsement from the Planning and Zoning Commission in recent history. So that's been abandoned in favor of this abutter here to the east, just a half of the road, and then to Dr. Karim, Dr. K, who owns this now, as well as the other side of Collins Lane. So that is now one parcel, and it will be consolidated by his legal counsel, subsequent to approval if you so choose to approve the application. Incidentally, we went last Wednesday night to the Inland Wetlands Agency, and when we were there, they reviewed the application and unanimously approved it. So so here, there's wooded areas to the north side of the property and all wrapping around it. Just to the east of it is what we call Porter's Hill, which is where the sledding facility is on the far side of the ridge. And then this is the far western portion of that property that was acquired from the Collins family not too long ago. And that is all wooded next to us, heavily wooded, with mature plantings. When we look to the, oops, here we go. For some reason I grabbed that. Here we go. Okay, so we look to the west, and here is Riverwalk over here. Here's the Pierce Road intersection, and the entrance to Riverwalk is right here. And so here's the abutting street right there, Pierce Road. And then just to the north, here's Mitchell Fuel, and then the converted house that Dr. K's practice is inhabiting, and that's roughly just over 700 feet from the house. The zoning around here, they're in the rural residential zone, and to the west and to the south and to the east of it is residential, rural residential as well, which is of course one lot, typically one lot zoning, 1 acre lot zoning. And then to the southeast is the complex that RSK built, the 3-building complex, medical complex, primarily medical offices on the other side of Sand Hill Road, which leads you over to Nevers Road Park and Police Station. So that gives you a general idea of what we have. There's a single-family home across the street. There's one right next door, and I mentioned the other one on the old Collins Lane, just to the east. Otherwise, the only housing is Collins Hill 1 and 2, I call it, to the rear, served by Collins Crossing, the street. And then there's Sunrise Lane off to the northeast, but you have to go through a substantial wooded area, forested area, heavily forested area to get up there, up on the hill. So that's the only real residential area here, and that's St. Peter's Episcopal Church down the southeast corner. So what I'll do is I guess I can hopefully change to the next slide. Okay. So here's a color exhibit of what we're proposing to do. So here's the current entrance drive. Andy from Real Engineering is here. He's a traffic engineer. He'll be addressing you in a moment. But what we're basically doing is widening the current driveway, which is about 10 feet in width, in need of some assistance. That's going to be brand new, 24 feet wide, so accommodate two-way traffic. All the way back to right behind the existing residence, which will become the medical practice, is a 20-car parking lot. That will consist of, in anticipating the chairman's questions regarding the EV and handicap parking, we only require, it's 20 spaces as we propose it right now, but eventually it's going to become 19 as we expand with another 8 spaces to the rear. So effectively, it'll be reduced to 19 spaces as we add another handicap space, and we have to reduce one conventional space to create the van space. So we'll have, the only place to put the handicap space is because the grades meet the requirements. Of course, we want to do that at the end of the handicap ramp, which is going from the first floor level to the parking lot, which will meet ADA requirements under 8.3% slope with handrails, and I think it's around 22 feet long. We've added those to the plans, the distance. But just at the immediate end of the ramp there, southeast corner of the parking lot, we'll have one handicap space initially, and when we go to expanding the parking lot, as we go to another phase of the development, if and when that happens, then we'll end up with another handicap spot right next to that. They share a common landing area in between. And then we're going to be putting the handicap, there'll be a dual port for the, for the EV stations. They'll be energized, they'll be level 2 from the outset. And those will be to the left of those 2 handicaps, eventually 2 handicap spaces. So we'll share a port right in the middle of that. So we'll have to adjust it, slight striping and signage adjustment when they go into phase 2. And then phase 2 parking lot will go from 20 spaces to 27 spaces. Again, the 20 initial spaces will be reduced by 1 in order to accommodate, shift over the EV space for the van space. And then we'll have 8 new spaces. So we'll go from 19 and then another 8 brings us up to 27. 26 parking spaces are required. It's a 3,800 square foot building. Initially, we only need 15 spaces. Dr. K requested 20 initially, and then we'll expand it later. Off the northwest corner of the building, he will, in the future, he'd like to build an addition. It's 1,800 square feet. It'll look very much like the existing building. We do not have architectural elevations, therefore we're not asking for final approval for that. Just to let you know, there could be addition off the back left corner of the building, which will be in keeping with the historic character of the building. The second phase will probably actually be a barn, which is right, oops, I gotta go back one, which is right here. There's historically been a barn on the property. It's gone. It was dilapidated and was removed. But they'd like to do a 1-story barn. The architectural elevations have been provided, or pictures have been provided to you, are of a Cloder Farms shed. It's about just over 1,000 square feet in size. They'd like to build that barn, but we first have to have a discussion with the commission as to whether or not we could do, to use that for his medical practice. He would like to have workshops, educational workshops, and other activities related to the practice in that barn. Invite his patients there and the community to understand healthcare issues and perhaps exercise, that type of thing. So we don't know if we can do that because in our reading of the regulations, it says you can do an expansion of the building up to 100% of the first floor. So bringing us up to 1,900 square feet, 3,800 square foot building. He's proposing 1,800 square foot eventually for that expansion of the building. Could we use the accessory buildings? There are 2 proposed, the barn, and also there's a small shed that's on the property about 12 by 18. Could we use those for that type of purpose, community outreach type things and patient care things, not normal medical practice, but health related in those 2 buildings? So if you think that we can't do that under the current regulations, then we'd be glad to return with a zoning text amendment for your consideration, whether or not we could allow accessory structures for ancillary uses for this. That's certainly up to the commission. So we also have off the, beyond the front yard setback line, there's a wooded area here. It's all wooded. That area is surrounded by the old Collins Lane. And in that, we're proposing our dumpster. Reason we have that, and Glenn can go through that, but we did turning movements for the truck. We can easily get in and out of there. But if we were to put it, the only other place to really put it without ruining the park-like setting is to go at the end of the parking lot on the east side, right in that area, to the right side of it. And we would not like to do that. That adds unnecessary additional pavement. for turning around for the truck, excuse me, the dumpster would have to be closer to residences on the west end of it, and then the truck would back out at the end of it and then make a movement down. That'd add a lot of pavement on the east end and a little bit on the west end of the parking lot, and we'd rather not do that. We think it's adequately screened on the south and east, and Mr. Martin, Glenn Martin, our landscape architect from Design Professionals, can address what he can do there and what he's doing it. He has an opaque fence around it, he'll discuss that. He has plantings around it, he'll discuss that. And he could even expand the landscaping, the plant materials to the corner there, to the left side of the proposed dumpster. So he will be available to review that when he does his presentation. As for parking, so the existing building will require, as it's being renovated, and we have some pictures we can show you later, which shows the exterior of the building, all four profiles of it, pictures of it. It's in need of significant care inside and out. It'll be quite an expense to him to preserve this building. So that alone requires about 15 parking spaces, so we're doing a little bit more than we need to now. If we were to use the barn for ancillary purposes that he could even describe in further detail if you'd like, health-related and medical-related purposes, that would require another 4 parking spaces. And if we were to use, and then the addition will require another 7. So we'll be up to 26 required, and we're proposing 27. If you allow that, but that's only if you allow use of the barn and ancillary building for that purpose. It was determined by REMA Ecological Services that there is no wetlands on the site and there's no floodplain either. So I bring that to your attention. We also, and incidentally, there's a 10, in your regulations, there's a 10-foot wide buffer. It's required abutting residential uses. It's all heavily forested on the east side. You really can't see through that. So we don't need to do that on the east side, although we'll designate the 10 feet. But Glenn will indicate what we're proposing to do on the west side and the north side, although the abutter to the west indicated he might not like to have that planting put in on his property line. If he's here, he can address you to that effect, or maybe he submitted a letter. Did he submit one? Okay. If we, oh, yes, gentlemen, maybe he will address you with respect to that. He'd rather forego the plantings on the side. He thinks what's there is adequate. So the expected hours of operation are 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. However, they would like to reserve the potential for extending that to 7 o'clock weekdays and also 9 to 3 on Saturday. They would like to do 9 to 3 on Saturdays from the outset, so they'd like to do that. So 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. They could extend that to 7 o'clock Monday through Friday, and on Saturdays 9 to 3. And they have presently 2 full-time employees and 4 part-time employees presently, right? And hopefully they can grow a little bit as well. I would like to go through the special exception standards and procedures, and then I'll defer till later on after Michelle and Jeff have given their presentations about responding to their comments and town staff comments, if I may. I think it would be appropriate to do that. So let me first start with the special exception standards and procedures. So there are 15 items in the review criteria. The first one addresses the plan of conservation and development, and we think preservation and conversion of this 5-acre residential property is consistent with the POCD, especially strategies A, B, D, E, and F of the community character section of your current plan of conservation and development. And I know you've got a draft for the new one, but we're only reviewing the current plan of conservation and development. Second item under special exception criteria, have we met the requirements of zoning regulations? It's certainly converting the existing house for the medical office meets the requirements, including, that's the intent of it, parking. EV charging stations will have 2 from the outset, sharing a port, single port, and they'll be energized. For stormwater management, which Jim Lusick will present to you momentarily. Erosion control measures, he'll do that as well. And also, under section 5.3.3A, uppercase A, conditions 1 through 8, the building has to be at least 50 years old. It has to have 150 feet or more of lot frontage. We certainly have about over 500 feet. Line of sight is to CONDOT requirements. It does. 10 feet wide buffers. Future additions are under 100% of the existing structure. The only question is whether or not we have the ancillary buildings detached. Doctor's offices are allowed, and impervious coverage, 40% is allowed, and we're going to be at about around 10%. So greatly reduced from what the requirement is. And we will be preserving the architectural features of this 155-year-old building. And also, the regulations require that the location be on a major thoroughfare in town, and Sullivan Avenue is one of those thoroughfares. Is the land physically suited to the proposed use? We think it certainly is. Medical office and preserving a historic building in a park-like setting. It is beautiful out there with all the trees. If you haven't seen them, some real specimen trees out there. Minimal, if any, adverse environmental impacts are created. We don't expect any. Again, there are no wetlands on the site. We have low impact and BMP measures have been followed in the design. Most large number of existing trees will be preserved, many of which are specimen ornamentals. And if you look at the back of the REMA report, which was submitted, that's George Logan's report. He'll address some of those specimens that he saw. No traffic or other hazards will be created. Certainly, we believe there are none, and that will be addressed by Andy from Real Engineering. The impacts on the capacity, the 6 items, the impacts on the capacity of the present proposed utilities, street, drainage system, sidewalks, and other elements of the infrastructure will be minimal. We think infrastructural capacity impacts are negligible for this small development and with a minimal land area disturbance of, we're only developing really an acre of the roughly 5 acres. And that's just modifications to the lot of that. There will be minimal or no adverse effects on existing uses in the area. We think it will not adversely affect the neighboring properties as well. We're pretty much separated from those by distance. And even the drainage goes away from the abutters. Surrounding property values will be conserved, we think, because we're preserving the integrity of the building and then the park-like setting. Character of neighborhood will be maintained or minimally disrupted. Your requirements under item 9 of special exception review criteria. And we think the character of neighborhood will be minimally disrupted and maintained due to the modest size of the proposed development, preservation of most of the trees in iconic historic building, and sheer distances from other uses. The general welfare of the community will be served, we think so, adding his medical practice, growing it for the neighborhood, and preserving the building and landscaped area. Item 11, there's a balance between neighborhood acceptance and community needs. We're supplying additional medical care to the community, and we think it'll be well received by the neighborhood. The historic factors are preserved. There's no question about that. We're doing that. Item 13, the overall physical appearance of proposed development is compatible with surrounding development commission's goals for neighborhood. Proposed low impact and beautifully landscaped property will remain compatible with the surrounding property. 14, second to last, architectural design is aesthetically pleasing and it blends well into the surrounding area. It is the same architectural style. It'll be repaired, fixed up, maintained. And finally, noise created by on-site activities, including vehicle equipment noise. Limited sounds we expect discernible to off-site residents will be created by the proposed medical office use. Distances to area residences is significant. Generated vehicle traffic is extremely low volume, as Andy will indicate. Occasional delivery vehicles, property maintenance, and normal refuse collection on-site activities are routine. Offensive sounds will be from the Sullivan Avenue traffic, especially during peak periods that Andy will address. So what I'd like to do is just turn it over to, and then I'll go through responses to town staff comments and some concluding remarks. First, I'd like to turn it over to Glenn Martin, our licensed landscape architect, who will review his landscape architectural plan, as well as the site lighting and other elements. Glenn?
As Peter mentioned, I'm Glenn Martin, landscape architect with Design Professionals, and I'll review the landscape design with you. We are providing shade trees in the proposed parking area. These trees will be honey locusts and red maples. So in the back here, we have 3 proposed trees. The red maples and honey locusts will provide flowers for pollinators. We're also providing evergreen shrubs and perennials along the foundation at the building entrance. So in this area here, we have some foundation plantings. Try to zoom in here for you. You can see that a little better now. So the foundation plantings would be right here. At the request of town staff, we have increased the number of perennials in this area which will attract pollinators. These native species include purple coneflower, butterfly weed, and coreopsis. They will benefit insects with their flowers and also provide seeds as a food source for birds. Along the north and west property lines, we're providing 53 native mountain laurels and 55 rhododendrons. So along the northern property line, a full row of rhododendrons and mountain laurel, and also on the western side here. The woods at the rear of the property will remain, and the nearest existing house to the north is approximately 223 feet from the proposed barn. So from that corner of the barn up to the nearest house is about 223 feet. On the west, the nearest adjacent house is approximately 200 feet from the existing building on our site. The proposed mountain laurels and rhododendrons will enhance the screening from the adjacent residence that the large wooded buffer already provides. These evergreens will provide colorful flowers for pollinators and also cover and nesting sites for birds. We're also providing evergreen arborvitaes for screening on the west and southeast property lines. So in this area here, we have some arborvitaes, and also further down on the southeast, we have a row of arborvitaes here also for screening. These shrubs will provide additional cover and nesting habitat for wildlife. Arborvitaes will also be provided to screen the dumpster enclosure, which is a solid wood screen fence enclosure with gates. So here at the dumpster enclosure, we have two sides with arborvitaes, and the enclosure itself will be a solid wood enclosure. Most of the wooded area along Sullivan Avenue will also remain. So this large area here will remain wooded as a nice screen for the property. Only a small area of the woods will be disturbed for the installation of the dumpster pad. Also, most of the large existing trees at the front and sides of the property will remain. These trees give the property a nice park-like feel. So all these trees in the front, these here are large maples. There's a large dawn redwood here and some large hollies here and a mix of other trees. All those will remain and not be disturbed. As I mentioned, these trees include red and sugar maples, which provide flowers for pollinators and seeds as a food source for wildlife. Other trees to remain are large American hollies, which also provide flowers for pollinators and berries as a food source for wildlife. There's also a large dawn redwood, which will remain at the front of the property, which is a very nice specimen tree. It's also providing a nesting site for birds and seeds for wildlife. Next, I'll talk about the lighting design. The proposed fixtures, which will be in the parking lot and also along the entrance drive, will have a modern slim profile. The luminaires are 12 feet high and are full cutoff fixtures. At the request of town staff, we have modified the light color to be a warmer 3000K lamp while still providing sufficient light levels on the walks, parking area, and driveway. And the photometrics that's in the set prove that there are 0 foot candles at the property lines on the west, north, and east, and just a little bit of light trespass at the front driveway entrance, which we think helps with the safety of the driveway in that location. The last thing I'll talk about is the truck turning movement at the dumpster enclosure. And I'll move to a different sheet for that.
When you get there, could you tell us what the drawing number is?
Oh, yes, yeah. Oh, here we are. That is site plan sheet CSP2, which has the truck turning movement. And we show a garbage truck at the dumpster enclosure on the site plan. This plan shows how a truck will enter from Sullivan Avenue from the south and north direction and access the dumpsters. So the truck can pull in from north or south. It's going to pull in past the dumpsters and then back up and then pull forward to access the dumpsters. And then again, it can pull out and exit the site. That's all I have. Next, I'll turn it over to our traffic engineer to talk about the traffic engineering. Oh, yes. Yeah, the other slides are after that.
And which drawing is that? Oh. We allow public hearings to go to, I think, 10 or something. They're automatically allowed to go longer.
Good evening. My name is Andy Chakraborty. I represent Real Engineering Incorporated. I'm a licensed professional engineer, state of Connecticut, and a certified professional traffic operations engineer. I was hired by Ford Elements to conduct a traffic impact study for the proposed medical office building, about 3650 square feet. And the existing building footprint is to be retained. I think there's an existing residential structure that's being reused as a medical office building. So to orient everybody as to where we are, Sullivan Avenue, which is Connecticut Route 194, state-owned facility. 8 Collins Lane, the property there is situated right in the middle of 2 T intersections which are signalized, one with Pierce Road and the other one with Sand Hill Road. And the access to the property will be maintained, although by a widened driveway. I think it'll be a 24-feet driveway. So with that kind of a background, I'm just going to take you through as to what I did as a traffic engineer, as to what to look at the traffic impacts, or the possible traffic impacts of the proposed development. So we did some vehicular turning movement counts, and we observed the signal operations along Route 194. We did the counts on January 18th between the hours of 7 and 9 in the AM and 4 to 6 PM. Schools were in operation. Schools were open, and no untoward weather conditions were observed during the counting period. We did analyze intersections of Pierce Road, Sand Hill Road, and the side driveway with Sullivan Avenue. And as I indicated, the AM and the PM time periods are on the screen. So what we found out is the peak hour of operation in the AM was 7:15 AM to 8:15 AM. And the PM, the peak hour of operation was 4:15 PM to 5:15 PM. We did some traffic analysis using the Synchro software, and we found out, of course, that the, basically following the highway capacity software procedures, highway capacity manual procedures. What we found out that all the existing intersections operate optimally. What does that mean? It's like level of service A or B. Level of service E is a delay of 0 to 10 seconds that the intersection experiences, that's seconds per vehicle. And level of service B is basically 10 to 20 seconds per vehicle that the intersection motorists experience. So we did grow the traffic volumes by a 2% factor to account for area-wide traffic growth. Although the ambient growth is like 1% per year, we were conservative just to make sure we're accounting for any other, maybe some expansion that we don't know about, some other projects that are going on around the vicinity. So we did grow the traffic volumes by 2% to 2025, and we did the background of the no-build traffic operations analysis. And we found out the intersections remain at levels of service A or B. We generated the trips that are anticipated to be produced by the Medical Dental Office Building. We used the Institute of Transportation Engineers publication, the Trip Generation Manual, and we found out that about 131 trips will be generated by this development. The AM peak period will generate a total of about 15 trips, and the PM peak hour will generate a total of 17 trips. And then we reran our analysis on the build condition as to see what the impact of that development is. And we found out that there was absolutely no impact. The levels of service were pretty much the same. And the driveway also operates at an acceptable level of service. We did take a look at the current access conditions on Route 194 vis-a-vis the driveway. And we found out that there are two very long storage lanes on both northbound and southbound 194 coming to the intersection of Pierce Road and also Sand Hill Road. And our queue analysis indicated that the 95th percentile queue length at both those locations are considerably less. It's about 22 or 23 feet, as I've indicated in the traffic impact study report. So our recommendation in order to kind of create a safe ingress and egress of the driveway from 194 is that to reduce that storage length in both directions and kind of create almost like a median opening so that the left turns and the right turns are properly negotiated. And I believe the town staff made a comment that whether we can include a left turn pocket from southbound 194 into the driveway. Our response is yes, absolutely we can. Maybe a small, like a 50 feet left turn pocket. And however, the design, since it's a state facility, will be subject to a review and approval through the encroachment permit process by Connecticut DOT District 1. In conclusion, we don't have any significant impact on the traffic operating conditions of the intersections, and we didn't find that there was any cause for concern, safety or otherwise. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty, Andy. Next, we'd like to have Jim Luzick come up with respect to civil engineering aspects of the plan.
Is on? Okay, sounds good. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Luzak. I'm a licensed professional engineer with DPI. And I'm going to provide a very brief overview of the engineering aspects of the plans that you have in front of you in support of this application. Just let me get some plans. Maybe this is. Yeah, get it for me. Yeah. Actually, just take me to the ENS plan if you would. Okay. Thank you. I'm just going to try to zoom this in for everyone's benefit. Okay, so just existing conditions, as everybody knows, this is an existing house served by a gravel driveway. There was a gravel area behind where we're proposing a new paved parking lot. That's really the extent of the improvements we're talking about. We're talking about paving the driveway, paving a parking area, as Peter pointed out, it'd be 20 spaces now, expandable up to 27 in phase 2. And how we're handling the drainage on that area now becomes impervious. We're going to provide 2 infiltration basins, one on this side of the proposed parking lot, and then one down further near the road, the existing connection to Sullivan Avenue, this area here. And this infiltration basin will take runoff from half the parking lot and this driveway. It'll be funneled into here. We did soil testing out on site. The soils were fantastic, probably the best sand I've seen anywhere around. Couldn't even do a perk test in it. So we're very confident that our drainage calculations are accurate. We presented those to the Wetlands Commission. They agreed that that was in line. So all the little bit of runoff of this 8,000 square feet of parking will be directed into one of these two basins. With that, there's E&S controls around each of them. During construction, of course, there will be silt fence, hay bales, and additionally, if for some reason these basins do fill up in a very large storm, we're providing some matting, some erosion control matting on the outlet side to protect any kind of outflow that may happen, but it's really not until the very large storms. With that, I'll close my comments and we'll be ready for some questions from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, that's okay, thanks. Thank you, Jim. We'd just like to show you one exhibit we haven't put up on the screen yet, which is the turning lane that was alluded to by Andy.
Talking about on Sullivan Avenue?
Yes, on Sullivan Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Can you blow that up a little bit?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Is that the one that shows the left turn?
Yes. Yep. Here's the new turn.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes.
Do you want to explain it?
This is Andy Chakraborty again. As I've mentioned in my presentation before, we were able to reduce the storage length, the northbound Sullivan Avenue to 200 feet. Still a lot of storage, considering the fact that with the 95th percentile queue length for both AM and PM peak periods, about 23, 22 feet. So just one car and 200 feet kind of leaves more than enough space for any possible queuing. And with that, we were also able to squeeze in 50 feet left turn pocket for the southbound vehicles turning into the driveway. So there's not going to be anybody standing behind people who are coming through on southbound Sullivan Avenue, thus helping the operating conditions there. But again, this design is to be reviewed by Connecticut DOT and District 1 before being finally approved. All right, thank you.
With that, I'd like to defer until after town staff have given their presentations, and I'd like to respond to their written comments.
As usual, yes, of course.
Thank you.
Just so everybody knows that's sitting out here, we will be unable to act on any of the applications tonight due to our bylaws, which end a regular meeting at 9:30.
Regular meeting ends at 10 and a public hearing 10:30.
Okay, so by the time we're done with this public hearing, which could go as long as 10:30, we won't have time to act on any of the applications. So if you're sitting here waiting for that, in addition, I don't think we'll start the EV charging hearing either. So we're just going to finish up with this public hearing. So we now get comments from our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. So this is a request for a special exception to Section 5.3 Office Conversion Overlay and Site Plan Approval for the conversion of an existing home to professional offices at 1300 Sullivan Ave in the rural residential zone. The applicant intends to operate a medical office at this location. The Planning and Zoning Commission may recall in the last year you recently commented to the Town Council on the abandonment of Collins Lane, which was abandoned by the Town Council, and that right-of-way is being incorporated into part of this particular site plan. The office conversion overlay regulation was enacted for the purposes of allowing conversion of existing structures in the underlying residential zones to professional offices to facilitate the preservation of historic structures, taking into consideration such factors as proximity to commercial uses or zones, traffic volumes, amount of commercial traffic, and the suitability of the land for the office conversion. This is subject to the review criteria of Section 8.5 of your special exception criteria, which Mr. Jamali kind of reviewed. I won't reiterate all those. And then there are some specific criteria related to the office conversion overlay zone, specifically in that it relates to the age of the structure, having to be at least 50 years old. You have to have at least 30,000 square feet, 150 feet of frontage, adequate sightline entering and exiting. We look for a landscape buffer. This is the one comment that Peter's alluded to a couple times. One of the criteria is that any addition to the structure shall not be greater than 100% of the floor area of the existing floor. We have interpreted that, or at least I interpret that to be as half of the building is 3650, so they'd be entitled to half of that as far as an addition to the floor. As far as an accessory structure, I can just comment that in all the office conversion overlays that we've done, which have been about 4 or 5 of them that I can think of, they've never had an accessory structure used for the business. You may recall the Kabbalah real estate offices over on Deming Street have a big barn that was in the back that they expanded, but that is for personal use. So again, that is something that my read of the regulations is you'd want some kind of other language in there to be able to have more than 50% addition. So that does affect the phasing that's shown on these plans and something the commission will want to address with the applicant. Just a couple other things that under this particular regulation, it was originally set up to be generally professional offices like doctors' offices, attorneys' offices. You may recall a couple years ago the commission modified the regulations to allow 25% of the building to be able to be used towards a personal service shop. So a hairdresser, for example, could go into property that is office conversion. It's not the intent here, but just so you understand possibilities. Maximum impervious coverage we allow is 40%. Whenever the existing structure has historic or architecturally redeeming features, efforts should be made to preserve it. This is a perfect example of why we put this regulation in place. So the applicant provided a narrative about the hours of operation. We talked a little bit about the existing shed. It's on site. If they're going to be used, they'll have to address that with you as far as using accessory structures. The only site changes being proposed include the widening of the driveway, the parking lot in the back. There is no walkway being shown out along Sullivan Ave or to Sullivan Ave. We had suggested the possibility of a sidewalk maybe going along the existing right-of-way that's been abandoned since it's in a paved area. The applicant hasn't shown it on any revised plans. They say they will do it if the commission wants them to. So I guess the point is the commission should discuss whether you look for any walkway down from the facility to Sullivan Ave. And I think that the other comment that we'd had for the applicant is I particularly am not crazy about the location of the dumpster. I feel like we never see dumpsters in our front yards. We usually see them behind the building or on the side of the building. They've offered their reasons why they want it there. Again, that'll be a commission decision on whether or not you want to have the dumpster in the front yard area. Other comments that we had made to the applicant were related to some of the landscape strips along the perimeter. We did offer some suggestions of some changes to the landscaping to include mountain laurel and rhododendron and arborvitae, which they have incorporated into the plans. We did have a comment related to the site lighting. If you look at the photometric plan at the property line along Sullivan Ave, it does exceed what we allow in our regulations. I know it is along the roadway, but it does exceed the regulations, so we would look for the applicant to bring that into compliance along that area. They have reduced the color temperature at our request, so again, we do appreciate that. We would recommend that the applicant return to you with any additions, whether it's the addition on the house or if you do approve the barn to be a medical facility, and possibly go to design review if appropriate at that time. They do not have any signage decided upon at this time. This would be entitled to both signage out at the street as well as along the building. There are no regulated wetlands on the site. They are disturbing over half acre, so they did visit the Wetlands Commission and did receive approval on April 11th. There was a recommendation of a $5,000 erosion bond and a $5,000 stormwater bond. The site is currently serviced by public sewer and a well. The intent is to connect to public water, and the existing well will be disconnected from the building's domestic water system to be used for irrigation. A well abandonment verification form will have to be required with our health department. I'm kind of skipping around, but I think those are the primary comments we had. If this application is approved, we would be requesting that they file a new deed combining the property. Again, all of our zoning data is based on this being combined with that small piece out in front, the 50-foot right-of-way, as well as the large property, so a new deed would be appropriately filed at that time. Thank you.
And now from our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Michelle indicated, we normally look for a pedestrian connection from the building to the street and often sidewalks along the frontage. Realizing there's some challenges with that, with this site, we would recommend a pedestrian connection from the building to the old Collins Lane, and then using Collins Lane to connect to Sand Hill Road and the crosswalk on Sand Hill Road, which would get you to the sidewalks on Sand Hill Road, which are on the south side. That's not currently shown. That would be our recommendation. Again, it's up to the commission to discuss that. I would like to see the location of the EV charger shown. And to me, it appears that when they add the reserve parking, they would have to add one more EV charger by your regulations. That's, again, something to discuss. I did recommend a short left turn lane be installed on Sullivan Avenue southbound, where that painted island is, so that traffic turning left can get out of the main flow of traffic and not block up Sullivan Avenue. And again, that would need state approval. Curb is not usually installed along the driveways, and I recommend a removal of the curb, particularly on the west side of the driveway, so stormwater can sheet flow off the driveway into the grass. Michelle mentioned the well, and I believe WPCA review and approval is needed for the change in use of this site. I think they're already connected to the sewer, but it's going from a residential use to a business use. That's all.
Thank you. Maybe a quick question. The Collins Lane is now actually cut off. There's a section that's not connected, so you still put a sidewalk, you want to put a sidewalk through there anyway?
Yeah, there's still pavement there.
Right.
Yes.
When the town abandons the road, it goes 25 feet to one property owner and 25 feet to the other property owner. So this particular property still owns 25 feet of that all the way down to Sand Hill.
Okay. All right. I think our normal protocol will be to have the commissioners first, but if you have some brief comments you'd like to make. Yeah, and the public too. Okay, so let's have comments from the public at this point. All right, and then Mr. Damali has. Are you coming? Okay. And if you would introduce yourself and sign in, please.
Sir, thank you.
Aha.
Hi, my name is Nelson Ledden. I'm the property owner along with my wife at 1250 Sullivan Avenue. We share the entire west property line for their property in question. The proposed bush line or hedges, we would be opposed to having that because the tree line, what we've been effectively using as our backyard over the years with our relationship with the Collins, would be cutting our yard, or not our yard, our effective use in half. And if it's okay, we would like to just waive that side, or our side, having a hedge line.
So I'm having a little trouble with the acoustics here. Maybe.
Sorry.
Can we bring up the drawing he's talking about? Because I want to make sure I understand.
two sheets. So the first existing topography
Oh, okay.
shows the actual tree line, and then your proposed one.
Oh, you want to see the survey?
Yeah, current survey.
Okay, there's the survey.
Can you zoom into that, where it illustrates the tree line? Just shift it over a bit.
Okay, there you go.
So as the illustrated tree line, it actually tapers back into their property. So we've been kind of using this as our backyard.
Could
per
you
se.
maybe hold the microphone up? We're just all having a little hard time understanding.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So the illustrated tree line, as it's showing, it currently goes from the south to the northeast. We've been using that as our effective backyard. So if they do propose this or do install this line of hedges, it would cut what we've been using over the years as a backyard. So we'd be okay. As we've had a discussion with them, it seems like if we could just negate that line of hedges that they're proposing on the topography plan.
I wonder, maybe we could figure out right now if the applicant has an opinion in there, and maybe Michelle also.
Well, I was just mentioning to Mr. Demely, it's a zoning requirement, so it's not like it's something we can waive. There may be an opportunity to look at it, you know, not as a solid stream of buffer or whatever, but I think for future use of that back property, if the physician decides to use some of that back property for trails or whatever, I think, you know, part of the whole reason for the buffer requirement is for long-term kind of screening between properties. So I think I would encourage you not to eliminate it, because again, we're not the Zoning Board of Appeals. They would be the body that could eliminate it. There may be a way to look at it more staggered and not quite as complete as what's being shown currently.
Yeah, that's it.
Can you come here for a second? Yep, you. All right, no problem. I'm having a hard time understanding.
You want to turn your mic on so we can record this?
All right. So this is your property here?
Yeah.
And your request is that?
This particular line of bushes, we'd be okay waiving it, if that was even an option, I don't know. That's why I'm just proposing the idea.
Okay.
So if you look at the first one, the actual tree line, over the years, we've cut it back to about here or so. And
Okay.
I've even proposed to them possibly acquiring that land. So I don't know if it can be shifted or what has to happen, but I had proposed to him if we could, if it's my right, I have no idea. Like, not requiring that of him, I thought that was just something that was required.
That's on our requirements, so. Okay.
I think we understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else from the public? Uh-huh.
Hi, my name is Anna Almeida, and my property abuts the northern side. It seems like people have been saying it's a lot of feet, but I can see the house very clearly from my backyard. I'm just asking about the 10-foot buffer. It's been said mountain laurels and rhododendrons, and they're not very tall. I'm sure it'll take even more than 5 years to be able to see past, to have that be a good buffer. Could we put arborvitaes in there or something else? And I don't know if people have gone through that land, but it's filled with invasives, bittersweet, dead tree trunks, rusted tractor parts. I just wanted you to be aware of that. That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Okay. Mr. Demely?
I'd like to just briefly go through the town staff comments, if I may, and just our responses to those. I think I'll start with the first letters we received from Michelle, April 4th and April 8th, including from the chief building official.
So just limit yourself to comments that have not been addressed, okay?
Okay, yeah. He indicated with 26 parking spaces, 2 handicap parking spaces are required. That's only if we do the second phase, and we'll do them side by side when we end up doing that. And then the EV stations will be right beyond that, to the west. 2 following stations. But in the first phase, the EV van space will be immediately contiguous to the handicap space. And then we'll switch it over. And we'll end up losing one spot when we switch it over when we expand the parking lot.
Are we approving 2 phases or 3 phases or 1 phase?
We're not going to ask you to approve the second phase now. We're apprising you of that. And the reason for that is that we don't have enough information for the phase for when the addition is put on. Assuming we can't, without a text amendment or something, use the ancillary building, the barn. If that's the case, then we're not asking for final approval for the second phase of the parking lot at this time. It's shown in the reserve right now. So if we're going to pursue either the barn or the addition, we have to return to you anyways.
All right, thanks for that clarification.
Second thing, he indicated, the chief building official indicated the handicaps, the EV space cannot share the handicap parking space. So that's why we're going to move those over to the west. Okay, when the second, that's for the second phase only. Let's see, we've already addressed another comment with respect to the ramp, so I won't go into that. We also addressed that the applicant's attorney will combine the parcels. The parcel in the front, which is separated by Collins Crossing, or Collins Lane, will combine those into one parcel. It's roughly 5 acres, just under 5 acres in size. There's a garden shed in the back right now. After comments from Michelle Leip, it's a 12 by 18 garden shed. It'd just be used for garden purposes and stuff, maintaining the grounds, maybe a little bit of storage or something. We won't propose it for any other use until we go through the commission subsequently for how we can use the ancillary buildings, if at all. We've identified the trees on the plan. Especially, there's a comment with respect to the 40-inch maple on the west side of the driveway. That's relatively close to the expanded driveway. We've done that many times before. We'll rely on the advice of a licensed arborist as to how they cut the roots if they need to, and also how much of the canopy needs to be removed. We've done that successfully in other parts, even in town. Jonathan Lane was an example. It's a big tree right next to the road. A professional arborist went and came in, cut the roots, and cut enough of the canopy to compensate for the reduction in root structure. So we can do that. Done that, okay. Yeah, signage, we're still under debate what they want to do for signage as a return for that. Okay, I think we can skip over that. The dumpster location. So in order to keep it away from the residences to the rear, the dumpster, which would be off the west end of the parking lot, and to avoid having to do the additional parking in that additional pavement in the park-like setting. So in the back, so you go all the way down the parking lot at the end, have a dumpster there, and then back out, and then come back out. Substantial amount of pavement, it's closer to the residences. We'd rather have it up front. You call it in the front yard, it's not in the formal front yard 50-foot setback, it's beyond that. It's taking advantage of the drive, the old Collins Lane. So come in and roughly you're thinking about once a week for refuse collection. And it's being hidden by an opaque fence as well as by the proposed arborvitae. There's enough room on the plan to even extend that on the west side, which would be observable from people southbound or eastbound in Sullivan Avenue, going toward the town hall, coming from like Geisler's Plaza. That can be expanded, so there's more plantings up to where the old Collins Lane turned off from the driveway. So we could do that to cut off the view of that. We don't think it's going to be offensively located. We think it's a good location. South side of it and the east side of it is heavily forested, and we're going to cut back a little bit on the trees there just to accommodate the dumpster unit. But we think that's a reasonable location for it and still maintains the park-like setting of this historic property. Let's see. So as Glenn mentioned, we cut back as requested by town staff, suggested by town staff. We cut back the luminaires, revised the luminaires to 3,000 K. And we have a little bit of lighting going over over the property line at the driveway entrance. It's the only place. We don't think that's a bad thing. We also get some illumination from the street light across the street on Route 7, Sullivan Avenue, Route 194. So we're already going to get some spillover there. We could cut it back if you want, so there's nothing from the new lighting on there, but we think that's not a bad location to have some lighting at the entrance into the state highway. It's not a lot, it's a very low amount, but if that's what you want us to do, we can do it. Let's see, got that. We've already addressed the comments with respect to the landscaping, the plant materials. So I think the final thing we want to address with respect to the planning department and building department comments are, because the other thing's been addressed, is just the sidewalk. So I think it's out of the question to try to do it on Sullivan Avenue. So town staff has suggested this other route. First thing you should know, he's trying to keep his costs low because he's a lot of money to put into the building, in the grounds. But they've never had, to their knowledge, they've never had a single patient walk to their facility, which is 700 feet up the street. That's number one. They'd rather not go to the expense of this. Third thing is, they think it's going to be so infrequent, if ever, they have someone walk to their medical practice along the old Collins Lane, that's where it will be now a pedestrian access point. Instead of closing it off at the beginning of, at the end of the common driveway area, served by that one house to the east, if we, instead of cutting it off, which we'd like to do, and to discourage people from going into the 5 acres who don't have any business being there, after hours and stuff, you can invite people to walk back in there, which is somewhat remote back in there. The other thing is, we'll be taking the first part of the Collins Lane up, that's used by the abutter to the east, has been resurfaced in recent history. It's in pretty good shape. So we just have to stripe the bituminous for a walkway. But beyond that, it's in relatively poor condition, so we'd have to rebuild that and, let's say, build an extension, asphalt extension. And then the question is, you go up to the building, cross it and go up, and you need to have handicapped ramps. Those expenses, they're like roughly $5,000 a piece, I'm giving, give or take in these days for each of those. And then you've got, and then we have to connect to there's a crossing that goes to nowhere at Sand Hill Road, from where the medical buildings are, the 3 medical buildings, at the end of the sidewalk on Sand Hill Road. There's a crossing there, and then it has a point in a different direction than we need. It has a handicap ramp, and that ends at the guide rail right beyond it. So we'd have to redo that so that we can point basically to the north or northeast. Go another 40 or so feet with an asphalt sidewalk, 4 feet we're thinking, to the existing driveway, which would be striped, where people would be walking in front of that house. So we think it's problematic, and it's additional maintenance, it's a liability, and they're convinced not many people are going to be using that. They've never seen, how many years you've been in operation here? 20 years. Yeah, 4 years of operation. They've never seen anyone walk up to their site, and it's only 700 feet up the street. So they don't really see a need for it, or that anybody would be using it. So they'd rather not do a sidewalk at all.
Okay, I think we got your point on that.
Thank you.
I would like to get the commissioners a chance to comment, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think we've addressed Mr. Doolittle's comments. Other than the curb, just one comment we'd like to make with respect to the curb. Jim, can you do that? The curb on the west side was suggested be removed.
Jim Luzak, engineer. To address Mr. Doolittle's comment, the reason why we have the curb there is so we can control the water. If we didn't have the curb there, the water would, on smaller storms, go into the grass, which would be great, and we wouldn't need the basin at the bottom at all. But I think that in a larger storm, that would be probably a potential
Where is
erosion
this
area.
curb?
Along the west side of the driveway.
Okay. So you want to put a curb along the drive?
Right, that's for drainage purposes, to bring the water down the driveway. The water that falls in the driveway is sloped to the inside, hits that curb, runs along the curb, and then goes into our infiltration basin. Without that curb, we would have no control. I wouldn't even know how to do the calculations, to be honest. So we could get rid of the basin altogether if that's the desire. We'd be happy to accommodate that.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, commissioners, Commissioner Boganski,
I don't have any comments right now.
Commissioner Willett.
So only two subjects. The first is that walkway or sidewalk on Collins is a little bit intrusive to the abutter to the east. It's an abandoned road that's essentially now it's abandoned. That's their driveway. So now you're going to have a sidewalk that nobody's ever going to use coming from Sand Hill through the woods up to a medical office, and you're really taking away another party's driveway. I disfavor that.
Okay.
Second point, I'm going to harp on it again because every time we come up here and talk about EVs, I just watched this presentation about the high school. They are adding or modifying 169 spaces at the high school. If I read the EV regulations that are an unfunded mandate from the state of Connecticut, they would have to put in 17 EV spaces at the high school. They have 5 designated, but the high school, the Board of Ed is asking for a waiver to defer installing those to a later date. The amount of time and—
Can we stay on this because we're running out of time?
I'm talking about this, okay? So that's about this. We're going to give a waiver to the high school, and we're going to require a small business owner. By disclosure, I'm one of Dr. K's patients. I've never been, the longest meeting I've ever had there is maybe an hour, and that's like an annual physical. No, people are in and out of there quickly. The EVs are not going to get used. I also look at what happened today with Tesla's earnings. Revenues are down 7%, car sales are down 11%. The EV market is collapsing in real time in front of us over the last 5 months. I would suggest that we enable Dr. K to either defer or just eliminate the EV requirement altogether.
Commissioner LeBlanc?
No comment, thank you.
Commissioner Dexter?
Well, first of all, I'm all for this. I think it's a beautiful opportunity for the Collins House and for a small business to grow. And I don't usually go on the record and agree with somebody, but I think Commissioner Ouellette has a point. And if we're going to waiver the schools, we should perhaps consider waivering this site as well.
Commissioner Foley.
Yep.
Vice Chair Foley.
I would like to make comment. I also agree with Commissioner Ouellette's statement. When it comes to the dumpster, I do agree with Michelle. Coming down Sullivan Avenue, you got this beautiful historic home that Dr. K is going to do a great job renovating. I don't want to see a dumpster. Like, that's not attractive. You can put the dumpster straight into the north and take those 2 spots that you'll lose, put them over to the west, and then problem solved. Now, as far as the curb on the west side, I do believe in a decent storm event, which is what we're getting as of late. I think that would control, maybe you could step up for me. Keeping the curb there is going to force the water out to Sullivan Avenue and bypass you have a catch base or?
No, the intent is that the curb, the entire driveway is pitched towards the curb, so all the water runs along the curb. When it gets down to that basin, there's an inlet for it, doesn't get past that. and then there's a high point just beyond that before you get to Sullivan Avenue. So that water actually comes back towards the inlet to the detention basin.
So, well, I'm looking at your elevations, your height, we're going from elevation one, we'll say 122, straight down to 116.
And I believe is there a little micrograde
Where's
there?
the high, where is your high point?
Yeah, we'll put it up on the big screen.
What I'm saying is, the way I'm looking at this gradation is that we're pushing the water to the west along that curb line, and it's gonna rush the water to Sullivan Avenue instead of letting it sheet flow across the lawn area. Am I missing that? Okay, so I'm reading it right.
Mr. Doolittle?
I mean, I can see having the curb down alongside the house and the walkway next to the house, so that you don't have water running towards that walkway, but then once it gets past the house, I don't see any reason why the water can't run into the lawn, and it'll still get to that detention basin.
I'd like to see it sheet flow. And that was the only other comment, and Dr. K, I do thank you for not asking for an abatement and just carrying your own weight. Thank you very much, appreciate that. All right.
Commissioner Viteri?
Peter, or whoever, just a quick question. Collins Lane, the old Collins Lane, will that be able to be an access point to the property?
When you're starting at Sand Hill Road, Sand Hill Road, half of the lane or half of that width of the right-of-way there goes to Dr. K. So the left-hand side of it is his right now. That's the law. Half went to the property owner to the right, and half goes to him. So up to the point where the like barricades, that general area, if you've seen those, up to that point, beyond that, both sides, the whole right-of-way is Dr. K's. And that's the way the law is. If he's on both sides of it, he has the interior area and the back area, he gets both sides of it, so he gets the whole thing. Up until that point, it's split 50-50 with the abutter to the east.
No, my point is, I think it's a bad idea if that becomes an access point to the property, because you could have somebody coming north on Sullivan that decides to make a mini turn and then cut across the traffic to try to go use Collins Lane to get in.
No, we would not allow it to be a driveway all the way out.
Okay, it can't be a drive, okay,
The only
that's the
thing we're
point I was
talking
trying
about
to
is
make.
a break in it for, if we implemented what's been suggested, which my client's not in favor of, it'd be basically a 4-foot or 5-foot gap in that just for the pedestrian corridor.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
okay.
we don't want any traffic going through there.
Okay, I
Nobody's
just want to make
suggesting
sure,
that.
and I did like the idea, for a silly reason, I liked your idea of putting that asphalt walkway right along Sullivan, because otherwise, like you said, you go across the street and you walk into a metal bar.
A guide rail, yep.
So at least it would make some usefulness to have that crossover and access if for the 2 people in the next 12 years that walk to your property, but I don't think it's a big concern. The only other concern I have, but I think it's just probably just something, if somebody coming south on Sullivan making the left to get into that driveway.
Right.
I mean, that's going to be kind of a traffic congestion, but I don't foresee it being so many cars that it'll be a complete tie-up. It's just, I think that's a tough
As
one.
Andy indicated, he studied the queuing factors and all that, and he has to justify that to the Connecticut DOT District 1 for the encroachment permit. He's suggesting we reduce the queue lengths because they're unnecessary, and we have enough of a gap for the occasional car that's going to take a left-hand turn into there. So we have an own exclusive area in the middle for them for making left-hand turns.
Okay.
Southbound.
Good, thank you. That's it.
Mr. Cavanero?
Thank you. So 2 general comments that I do have. I do agree with Commissioner Foley with moving the dumpster, the trash, trying to make sure it works within the project. Just want to put that on the
Okay.
record. The other comment that I do have is, while I would be I would be interested in exploring some sort of waiver or discussion regarding the EV spaces. The only thing that I will add to that is that I think that we would be setting a somewhat dangerous precedent, or not dangerous, but a complicated precedent in this town. And I say that because while yes, Dr. K has done a great deal for this town, and we should try and accommodate that at certain times, there are other small businesses in this town. And let's say in the next year we have 8 small businesses come forward, 20 parking space per each one, just a random example, and each one we grant an exception. At that point, there's almost 200 parking spaces and not a single EV charger space allocated. And so that sort of steers away from the intended goal of it. And so I would rather, instead of just hardlining with a stance right now and either having an opinionated stance right now, I mean, I'd be open to the discussion of it. I'm just worried about the long-term consequences, because we both have opinions of EVs work or EVs are dying, and we've been talking about this for some reason for the past couple of meetings, and it's still a topic. And so I'd like to have the conversation, but I don't want to come up with a decision tonight, obviously, but that's just where I stand on it.
We understand your decision, yeah.
Peter, is the building currently occupied?
No, no, it's vacant.
So if it's vacant, it's generating no traffic, right?
Zero traffic other than my
Sure.
car went in there, and a couple of consultants have gone in there lately, and Dr. K goes in there every once in a while.
So according to the narrative that was in our packet, you're creating basically 4 businesses. That's what I'm seeing. There's 4 specific businesses: direct primary care and integrative medicine, immigration exams and primary care for international visitors, aesthetic medicine and massage, vitality medicine, and weight optimization. But
Correct.
the
So
whole narrative talks about 4 different.
These are not 4 new businesses. These are 4 service lines that we currently offer already in our current space.
Okay.
So they're not new, they're all existing.
All right, so different patients are attracted to each one of these individually, right?
There's a fair amount of overlap as well.
I guess what I'm trying to get to is we have a building that's generating no traffic right now, and I'm seeing the evolution of 4 different services. What I don't know is how patients are triaged. For instance, vitality medicine and weight optimization, I'm not sure I know what that is, but that could be 20 patients at one time. That represents a class. So let me get to my question. So I'm concerned about the traffic and the queuing and the amount of it. When I think of Collins Lane, we're going from a building that's generating no traffic to possibly a lot of traffic because of the number of patients that you may be seeing. So help me understand how you schedule and how patients are triaged in and out.
Sure. So number one, like I said, our patients live all over the state. So we use a fair amount of telemedicine. So people are not coming in the office unless they absolutely have to. So that's the first thing. Number 2, and this may be shocking, unlike the traditional model where you may get about 5 minutes with your doctor and the doctor sees about 30 patients a day, our physicals are an hour and a half, our follow-ups are half an hour to an hour. So every patient has a significantly longer amount of time with us, and so there is no way we can even see 30 patients in a day because that's just not the way our schedules work. If we see 6 to 10 patients in a day, 10 patients is a busy day for us in the way our practice works because there's a lot of asynchronous and remote things that we're doing as well.
Okay, so that solves that problem then, right?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. One of the other things I was curious about, again, in the narrative, 2 floors, first floor medical offices, top floor residential?
No.
That's what it says in here. That was your mistake? Then, on behalf of Michelle, I apologize.
Apology accepted.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, sorry. So I noticed there are 2 silos on the site. and it looks like you want to preserve them, but they also strike me as something, if you have a family business here, you know, they're not safe. They're not in a safe condition. So we need to do something so children who get into those silos aren't going to get hurt. So
That'll have to be addressed by Dr. Kay and his builder with the chief building official to make sure they can remain, or what they have to be, what has to be done to them to make sure they are safe.
I mean, I think they're very interesting, and I'd love to see them be preserved, but maybe we have
Little
to
history.
put a fence around them or something like that. Something to make sure that they're safe. You know, the building official might be a good way to handle that. But
Yeah, I think he'll be out there, and they won't be able to use them until it's all taken care of, and it has to
Okay.
be done
Let
relatively
me go
short
on.
order.
There was a comment that there's a bamboo stand in there. Bamboo is a really serious invasive species that can affect neighbors. So I'm wondering if this isn't an opportunity to get rid of that bamboo.
It's tough to do that, right? I know it's tough to do it. I have a relative who's trying to do that. I don't know the easy solution for that, because you know when you cut them, they often shoot up more. They grow faster. So I'm not sure how to do that, but we could look into that and see what we can do.
I mean,
hopefully-
it's a question of how deep you dig, I think.
Well, yeah, it's a real pain, and they
and
grow
we're-
real fast when you cut them, unless you kill them with some kind of spray or something.
Is it really bamboo or is it not weed?
Bamboo.
Okay. Never mind. So the Phase 2 barn, how's the parking? You've got parking shown in front of the Phase 2 barn, and then the picture of the Phase 2 barn looks like it's got 3 car entrances.
It's a garage building right now that we have. That's as far as we've gotten. We'll have to return to you with more comprehensive plans about what we're going to do with it, and whether or not you even want us to do it, other than just a barn for the property. That'll have to be discussed with the commission at a later date.
So it's not going to be allowing vehicles inside, basically?
No, that's not the intent.
Okay. I think that answers my question. Okay. So I think we're going to have to deal with all the building codes for the use of the barn as well. You know, is it, you know, for an accessory structure, what can they do?
If it's used, if I may, if it's used for, his patients go in, educational things, health things, related things, if it's used for that, it has to meet other code requirements other than just a regular barn.
Like insulation and?
All kinds of stuff.
Okay.
So
So we're getting right to the end of the hour. I think all my questions have been.
Thank you.
But I think we're going to need to continue this public hearing. Are we done?
It would continue it if you feel you need more information to be submitted. If you feel you have enough information, we could, you could deliberate and take action. So it's really up to whether or not you feel you have adequate information.
So I guess I'll ask the commissioners, do you feel you got all you need? You do?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any reason to continue the public hearing?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
I think you have enough information to make a decision.
Okay. We won't be making a decision tonight.
Well,
No.
I'd like to make a motion that we extend, and we could vote on the 2 previous hearings that are closed. And, I mean, we're here, we've heard them.
All right, so let's first deal with closing the public hearing.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing for this application.
Second has been received. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
We want to remember, we only have 7 members voting. I heard 9 ayes.
Okay. Yeah, our alternates are not expected to vote. Okay. All right. So we are closing the public hearing. And now we go into the regular meeting. And I think there's a motion coming.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting till 11 o'clock to close out the two previous public hearings that are,
I second it.
Okay. Any discussion? I mean, it's running pretty late. Yeah, we're going to lose one, so that would mean we have to figure out who to seat in your absence.
I think you have to have a two-thirds majority to be able to do the extension,
Mhm.
right? Did you vote on a two-thirds majority to do the extension? In order to extend it, you have to have a majority, two-thirds majority.
Okay, but so it would be Commissioner Boganski's will be seated for Commissioner LeBlanc. Do we have a, okay. Mhm. So. What?
Despina.
Despina, yeah. So, all in favor of extending the meeting to 11 o'clock?
aye.
Any opposed? Nay? Have a roll call, please.
I'll do it. Bernstein? Kevinero?
Aye.
Viteri?
Aye.
Foley?
Aye.
Dexter?
Aye.
Baganski?
Aye.
And Wagner.
No.
So 6-1.
Passes. All right, so. You have a motion for us with some conditions?
So for the high school, I'll give someone the approval conditions, but what I have is our standard approval conditions, right?
Just want to note that we are not going in the sequence of the agenda. We're going to go straight to new business. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Standard approval conditions, we've looked for the zoning data table to be shown on the final plans. They lost their zoning data table. Engineering comments dated today must be incorporated into the final plans. You weren't going to you weren't going to limit the number of games, if I recall correctly. That wasn't going to be an approval condition. This is what I have for the pickleball courts are for daytime use only. Noise levels shall be monitored over the first year. In the event noise becomes an issue, sound barriers shall be installed. The potential location of these barriers shall be shown on the plans.
So-
That's for the pickleball.
I'm having a little trouble understanding it. We don't have anything on paper to look at?
I will give it to you in a minute, but
Okay.
I don't have it. I've added to it, so I want to make sure I've got everything you want.
Good.
Okay. So this is that was related to the pickleball and the noise. Okay, the hours of operation for the fields are 9 p.m. for the stadium and 10 p.m. for the tennis courts. Those would be maximum nighttime hours. I put the comment, the lighting level shall be reduced following the event and turned off within an hour of the event, again, giving people time to leave the facility with light reduction. Any loudspeakers used on the field shall be directed away from the residential neighbors. All internal crosswalks will be raised crosswalks, just to clarify that. 2 additional handicap parking spaces shall be added to the lower parking area. That's that parking area down by the visitors. 5 additional parking spaces shall be added near the pickleball courts or alternative parking created, again, if they want to try to sign the road for some alternative spaces. And then the final one I have is the EV chargers will be waived. Well, actually, I don't know what you want to do with EV chargers, so you've got to decide. I heard one say that they have to meet the building code for sure. I don't know if you're going to waive them for a later time or not, but that would be the other kind of question mark.
So,
The other comment, too, was the question of whether or not additional landscaping should be along the parking area as requested by the abutter. That was I didn't put that on as an approval condition, but that's something that
Okay,
was brought
so
up.
maybe we ought to have a little discussion, so we don't have to have a amendment to the motion if somebody doesn't like the way we're dealing with EV charges or something. So personally, because they're gonna have another year before they build this, more than a year, I think they will have enough time to resolve their issues with EV chargers, so I'm not in favor of giving them an exception there. And the word waive is probably not the right word anyway, right?
I think you let it be modified to be done later, deferred, it's I think what you do, you allow it to be deferred.
So we defer that to next summer, I think. If for some reason that doesn't work, they could come back and ask for a minor site change. So the other thing was the additional buffering along the sidewalk. So let's talk about the EVs, make sure we know where that's going to end up. So why don't you start?
Well, my comment on the EV would be to agree with a lot of the sentiment that's been said, which is basically to defer requirements because of what's happening in the marketplace. But I had two other comments. In addition to those conditions, I could be wrong because maybe Michelle captured them, but there was some discussion regarding Attorney Shipman's letter. And it seems to me there's 3, 4, 5, 6 additional things that were kind of agreed to. And I don't know if they were captured, who captured them. And my last comment is, because the chairman announced that we would not be taking these two decisions on, everyone, the applicants all left. Can you let them know? I think it would be, only fair to let them know that we indeed did make decisions tonight.
I certainly will let anybody know that's not here in the morning, for sure. Because the public hearing's closed, they could not contribute, so from that perspective, not having them in the audience, but I agree, we did send them home.
They were gone.
I'm just going to look at my notes here. So we had a question of the height of the fence. Are we going to go with the 6-foot height that the applicant proposed?
I would think we would stick to the drawing of the 6-foot high chain link fence, which is the standard.
That was the recommendation out of the Parks Department.
Right.
In terms of adding additional vegetated buffer on most of it, and I'm not talking about the sidewalk section, but I think we had some technical comments that it really wasn't feasible. Is that okay? Are we losing somebody or just a yeah, okay. I think this number 3 here is just the statement of our own regulations. And we do have, I mean, I don't think I need cross sections, but number 4, I think we've already got the number 4. We're already meeting that, right? We have screen.
Starts with 6.
Yeah.
Those are the new ones based on the revision.
Yeah. Well, okay, but number 5, I think we're meeting that. Number 6, we've already taken care of. That's a 10 p.m., 9 p.m. thing. Number 7, we've dealt with that as best we can. Number 8, which is the screening the walkway. How do we feel about that? I thought there's a problem with trees already there, right?
There's existing trees along that area. We may have to cut them back a little bit to add vegetation in that area. I think the resident was suggesting that we take the trees down to replant. I don't think we really want to do that, but we can certainly look to see if there's some interplanting that could occur.
So how do we feel about, I mean, is that something you think is a good idea, or?
We can certainly revisit it. Again, I don't think we want to clear-cut trees to add, small vegetation in there, but we can certainly look and see if there's anything that's viable that'll work in that area. We were focusing, quite frankly, more on the western boundary than that particular area, so.
So that would add some sort of a condition here.
Yeah.
What will we add?
Additional landscaping screening landscaping should be considered along the sidewalk.
Understory.
Understory landscaping.
Understory
Yeah,
plantings. Because the trees that are there are alive, they're vibrant, they're limbed up. Understory plantings such as mountain laurel, kalmia, rhododendron would suffice.
Number 9, we had an issue with the noise. I think all we can say is that the
noise ordinance is in place for anybody, so we don't really have to address it. The noise ordinance exists.
the point of contact is really not a zoning thing, right?
Yeah, a couple of those I think really are more appropriate for the school to come up with a point of contact and the rules regarding the uses of the field. I would encourage the Board of Education to have that role.
I think the cutoff lighting has already been met, the number of nighttime events. I'm not in favor of identifying how many at this time. I think it's not our job. All events using the new field should have security. I think we heard that they do. The applicant shall eliminate usage of portable external loudspeakers. So do we want to make a condition to remove the speakers in the original field?
I think I put a condition that they should be directed away from the residents, but I think the principal said that he was going to take up that matter. I don't know if I don't know them to be on there, so it may be something better the school to handle.
And that's really not in the area of this application, right? So maybe we'll just have to let them work with the school on that. Okay, so somebody want to read a motion?
So I just want to clarify, I am reading 11 all the way down, correct? Okay.
1 through 10 are standard conditions.
Okay.
The one with the bond you have to read.
What was that?
The one with the money.
It's a school project, we don't bond it.
Okay.
So reading 11 down, just want to clarify. Okay. Move to approve application 24-04P, South Windsor High School Athletic Fields and Campus Improvements. I'll start at point number 11. The zoning data table shall be shown on the final plans. Point 12, engineer comments dated April 23rd, 2024 must be incorporated into the final plans. Point 13 was crossed off. Point 14, the pickleball courts are for daytime use only. Noise levels shall be monitored over the first year and in the event noise becomes an issue. Sound barriers shall be installed. The potential location of these barriers shall be known on the plans. Point 15, hours of operation on the new field are 10 p.m. I can't read that.
Tennis court.
Okay, 10 p.m. for the tennis courts, and then at 9 p.m. for the stadium field. The lighting levels shall be reduced following the event and turned off within an hour of the end of the event. Point 16, any loudspeakers used on the field shall be directed away from the residential neighbors. Point 17, I'm struggling to read this, I'll be honest. Yes, I can't really read this.
She's a doctor.
She's going to medical school.
Internal crosswalks will be raised up.
Okay. All internal crosswalks will be raised. Yes, natural crosswalks, yep. And then point 18, EVSE chargers.
What are you going to do with it?
I can't read that. I'm just.
No, I didn't put down because I don't know what you guys want to do. So
Oh, yeah, that's circled. So just read point 19 then? Okay, point 19. 2 additional handicap spaces shall be added to the
lower parking area.
lower parking area. And point 20. I
5
can't read that,
parking
I'm sorry.
spaces to be added near the pickleball courts.
Can you read that? I can't read that.
You heard her, right?
5 additional.
It's
Say
5
it again.
additional spaces to be added by the pickleball courts.
Add 5 parking spaces near the pickleball courts.
Okay. And that's the final point on there.
Second.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
The
Oh,
EV
okay.
charger has not been addressed, though. The waiver has not been added to the conditions.
So now we should have a little discussion. I thought, read the condition about the pickleball courts only being used in the day, but we also have lighting there?
That is point 14. Pickleball courts are for daytime use only. I can keep reading. Noise level shall be monitored over the first year, and in the event noise becomes an issue, sound barriers shall be installed. Potential location of these barriers shall be shown on the plans.
So I guess I personally don't like the idea of limiting them to daytime use only because we are installing lighting and, you know, I think.
If the tennis courts
Right.
are good till 10, why
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the pickleball courts good till 10?
Yeah, I do agree
Correct.
with that as well.
So can you restate that condition without the pickleballs, if that's okay, I mean?
We would just eliminate the first sentence where it says, the pickleball courts are for daytime use only. We would start the sentence at point 14 saying, noise level shall be monitored, ... And of course it'd be whatever's there. We would just be eliminating the first sentence.
So you accept that change?
I do.
Have a second?
I do.
Okay. Now there's, I think, some idea that people want to say something about EV chargers.
I think we should follow the process that the high school is putting in place as far as the, you know, the waiver.
Okay, so defer installing pickleballs until the program is clarified for the school system.
You mean EV chargers, not
EV
pickleballs?
chargers, yeah,
Okay.
program, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, any other discussion or comments?
I didn't hear that. Can you repeat that again? What were you saying about the EV stations? We're going to defer it for now,
Right.
right? Okay.
It's already been,
Right.
it's already been deferred in all the plans.
They're proposing to defer it as part of the plan.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, everybody ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All we got to do is get the town council to schedule a referendum.
I'll work on my handwriting.
Okay. All right, so now we can take up the next item on the agenda, which is I should read it formally, application 24-08P, medical office building. And let's see, somewhere in our pile we have the condition.
You should have those.
I have this, yeah, I have it.
Yeah,
Is there anything
okay.
added?
So let's have a little brief discussion if people have things
I do believe that the dumpster enclosure should be to the north and not visible from Sullivan Avenue.
okay. I'm inclined to agree with that. I gotta say, I'm just delighted to see this project, okay? I mean, this is the kind of building that falls into disrepair and falls apart, and then we have to have it torn down, and here we have a super use being proposed, so.
Anything else besides the dumpster?
Yeah, the two other issues are the EV charger deferral and the elimination of the sidewalk or walkway requirement on Collins.
Should that be a condition?
So that's not shown on the plan, so if you're not going to require it, you don't need to put it as a condition. So we don't have to address the sidewalk. The only thing, there was a $5,000 stormwater bond as well as a $5,000 erosion bond. I think it only reflects one of the two bonds. So you want to add a $5,000 stormwater bond with the wetlands approval?
I guess I'm opposed to deferring the EV chargers. I don't know how many other people feel the same way, so. And deferring usually implies some kind of an end of the time when that deferral ends. It sounds like people just want to cancel it altogether.
The town did not get a deferral extension deadline.
Say again?
For the high school, the deferral is indefinite. There's no date on it that says when
Yeah, but
we
it
just
has-
approved that.
Just, I don't mean to interrupt, but alternates really should not be participating in your discussion.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a plan at least. This would be no plan.
There was a discussion of the neighbor about the landscaping, I don't know if you have anything you're going to do about the landscaping
No, I
as a
mean,
requirement.
I don't think we can do much about that.
I think we have to follow our regulations, and if they want to sell a piece of property to the neighbor and move that buffer, they could come in and do that. It'd probably a minor site plan change, right? But unless, I guess I don't like the idea that the neighbor thinks that since he's been using it, he gets to continue using it, okay? We have a new owner. That's the, yeah, right. So you want to read the motion and?
Sure. I'm going to make a motion to approve application 24-08P. This is for a medical office conversion overlay. We have a bunch of standard conditions, which I'm not going to read, but I'm going to read the bonds. Number 3, this application is subject to the conditions of approval of the Inland Wetlands Agency, including bonds in the amount of $5,000 to ensure compliance with erosion and sediment control measures. There's also a landscape bond in the amount of $5,000, which is required. It must be submitted prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy if work is not completed. There's also a $5,000 stormwater bond. All bonds must be in one of the forms described in the bond policy. And we have a bunch of standards, and then we have engineering comments dated 4/23/24 must be incorporated into the final plan. A new deed shall be filed in the land records combining the properties 1300 Sullivan with 8 Collins Lane. Wells on the property to be property abandoned and a well abandonment verification forms are required to be filed with the health department. The dumpster should not be located in the area shown on the site plan.
Okay.
To the north at the end of the
Driveway.
of the driveway.
We-
Northerly end of the driveway.
It should be in the northerly end of the driveway.
And then we need something about the silos. The silos shall be either determined by the building department to be safe or otherwise protected or removed.
All right, the silos on the property would then fall under the jurisdiction of the building department as far as whether they are safe for people to be around and to make that determination.
And if they're determined not to be safe, then that must be addressed in any way that the applicant can.
Okay, and the building department will make sure they are safe.
With the building department, yeah.
Okay?
I mean, I
Anything
know there are
about-
a lot of loose bricks in those things, so.
Yeah. Anything about the EVs? We're just going to let it go?
So we're not going to defer the EV?
Apparently, we don't have the votes on that, so. We'll just leave that alone.
Wait,
So do we have a
so wait,
second?
was there even discussion about?
Yeah, we kind of did. We kind of discussed it.
I would like to vote to defer the EV chargers on this
Okay.
property.
So I think the easy way to do this is to not put that in the original and then have an amendment, or we could go the other way, put it in, and then we'll discuss. I mean, if there aren't enough people to not defer, then we won't bother with, let's put it in.
Okay. We'd also ask that we defer the installation of the EV chargers until another time, to be determined.
Well, then we don't have any say at that time. I think you're permanently deferring.
Okay.
Or give the option to the applicant to defer.
Can always do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We have a
second it.
motion, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, how do people feel, how many people would like to see the EVs going in? I would, well, rather
Well,
than.
you could
have a vote, we
deny the
avoid it.
application, though.
No, I want to know if we're going to have an amendment to your motion. We have 3 people that want them in, or, no? Okay, so, let's. enough people who want to see the EVs go in to bother having a change to this motion. And I think I only see maybe 2 or 3. So I think we don't have it, so let's vote on the motion as it is. You seconded it?
I second it.
Yes. Okay, so any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations. We're really pleased that you plan to do what you're doing here. Right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.